get us rolling. We have to open the video. All right. Well, welcome everyone. Welcome to final reviews for Architecture 301, Studio 5. This is a studio taught in San Diego campus. On and off, of course, everybody's still very much working remotely, but we're those students that have the desire to use our facilities have been doing so. The shop view, it's been, I would say, very successful. I've enjoyed working with this group of 14 students. Work that we have produced goes from the analog to the digital, from the abstract to the representation. So let me just give a quick overview of what the studio topics have been, and let me just share my screen with you all. All right, so the topic of the studio is, like I was saying, is Architecture 301. D1 is San Diego, Studio 5. My name is Hector Perez, I'm the instructor. And the topic of the studio is, it's an idiosyncratic exploration of habitation. It's basically a house and housing studio. But in the way that I described it, I want to make sure that we deal with these three keywords, with this idiosyncratic, of, or relating to idiosyncrasy, peculiar or individual. Exploration is the action of traveling in or through an unfamiliar area in order to learn about it. Then, sorry, I have to let people in, and let me return to where was I? Sorry about this. And habitation, the state of process of living in a particular place. House as a personal conception, and housing as porous patterns for living. I have this quote by a very famous South American architect from Valparaiso, Chile. He's the founder of Ciudad Abierta School of Architecture. And he says, architecture has a capacity to embrace the indications of function, constructive methods, material economy, and social or ecological factors, but never should this become its only foundations. This is an architect that, together with Godofredo Yomi, a poet, founded a school of architecture in 1964 that explores, and has been exploring since then, the relationship between architecture and poetry in a literal sense. They have been building the school over the course of all these decades, and it's a phenomenal place. But the course description, the way that I framed it, is the primary topic of the studio centers on the fundamental questions about living organizations, human habitation, program definition, historical and cultural references. House and housing topics have been explored through a process of form and place making, both within and out of the dwelling units. The semester has been divided into two separate projects in terms of the scale. The singular house, which is the first project that they've completed in the first 6 weeks of the studio. And then the plural housing, which has become the topic of the last course, the last portion. And over the course of the semesters, the students have been encouraged to follow a design process that begins with critical observation, precise documentation, and daring form creation while oscillating between abstraction and representation, the dual processes of thinking and making. Following a scale sequence from small personal to large and communal, the students have developed 3 projects, the first one and the third one, will have required a design generative process. And the second one was an analytical investigative process. The development of each of these design exercises have been focused on topics of social, cultural, environmental, and economic references as it impacts house and housing. The first project, which we'll not be discussing today, but I just want to show you where the students have been with an example, started with a documentation of their most immediate surrounding, which is their bedroom. Measuring, recording it, unfolding it, and speculating, and finally composing over the drawings that they've produced about their private space. They were able to generate a diagram that served as a departure point for their single house project. The diagrams and drawings that they generated started with a simple drawing of the floor plan of their bedroom, an interior elevations of that bedroom, and external forces and elements that are key components that connect the unit to its occupant in an emotional or physical way, and also connects through these diagrams to the exterior of the place. So these beautiful renditions, and this is just, like I said, the example of one, became the way that the students started to think about their own place of origin as or their only place of residence as a source to generate an idea about architecture, a formal idea. So based on that drawing, each student created this simple wire diagrams, open-ended wire diagrams that then they were using piano wire. And then those piano wires models were actually translated into pipe drawings in Rhino. And those pipe drawings were set up to become perspectives. Those perspectives then, they produce several perspectives, and each one of them has the promise of an architecture, a single residence architecture with a very idiosyncratic way. Students do not know how this thing functions yet, but I've created a scalable gesture that becomes the departure point for the project. In the case of Andrea, she selects one of these wire diagrams and the resulting collage to resolve the entire unit. The unit is then resolved for its programmatic needs, and it's fitted into a small lot, a 30 by 70 lot in Barrio Logan. And the project becomes really an attempt to render in fully the initial diagram that was generated. The outcomes were actually quite exciting, as each of the students ends up with this unexpected forms, and they have to figure out how to make them function. So in this case, the goal of the project was to force the students to generate a complete project, single residence, where the parameters that they're forced into adopting are foreign to them. So that's where we started. So now we're at the cusp of the presentation that the students each are going to be making. The second part of the project, or the second project that was done, was actually the students selected a building from a housing building from around the world, and each of them made a presentation, a brief presentation that analyzes the architectural merits of the project, and culminates with the selection of one of the units from that project, which then will be processed through a form-making exercise and ultimately becomes the genesis for their housing project. With all I guess, information laid out to you the way that I have tried with this brief introduction, is there any questions about this and the projects that we're going to be seeing?
Nope.
Okay. Well, in that case, let's get started. I'm going to ask Please begin the presentation. Brayden, if you don't mind, please opening up your project and presenting us, walking us through your project beginning with a reference of site and concluding with the details of the project, please.
Sure. Okay. Okay. Can everybody see that? Is that full screen for everybody?
Yes.
Okay. Yes. Very nice. So I am Brayden Sandall, and this is my project. So for my case study, I selected, it's called Spencer Courtyard. It's located in London, England, and it was designed by the firm Kennedy Twaddle Architects. It was designed in 2020, and it has 5 different units. And this is the overall kind of axonometric of it. And then these are the different units. And that's the overall floor plan of the project. And so in this project, I decided to choose this particular unit as the jumping off point for how I'm going to sort of reinterpret this project into my own project. So from there, I saw that, of course, the most basic unit within that is this, you know, kind of iconic shape of the pitched roof. And I think it also is very much suited to the location in England with a higher pitch of roof and then the brick material. So first of all, I wanted to kind of change that a little bit. So I changed the pitch of the roof to be much lower, and then also sort of put it back into a perfectly rectangular shape, because this building was obviously very idiosyncratic and with its angles. From there, in this first one, I decided to radically change it and create these sloped roofs. And I tried to play off of the angles that were present in the original project, but sort of in a new way. And then in this interpretation, I stuck with the original iconic shape and reinterpreted it a little bit and started bending it and puncturing the courtyards within the shape. And then this is the final iteration that I ended up going with that also incorporates a tower unit where the same shape is kind of bend upwards. So from there, I ended up with this as sort of my overall axonometric of the project.
Let's stop and remind everybody, please introduce where the site is for this project.
Yes. So this is in Barrio Logan, right next to Woodbury University, right here, taking place of the teacher parking lot and then also the student parking lot. So it's just right there. And so with this project, I really wanted to maintain the mostly single story aspect of it, but additionally with the tower units. And I thought the sort of really flat facade was very intriguing to me with the contrast of a corrugated semi-transparent material. I thought was very interesting. It's sort of a reinterpretation of what they were doing with their bricks and the lattice work. Originally, we had planned on doing CMU bricks and sort of repeating that staggered pattern. And when I started seeing it as a whole, I started realizing that it was taking away from the sort of overall form of it, which I thought was very intriguing with these kind of flat faces, but then you have the transparency in very select areas. And then over here, we have the sort of overall plan of what's going on in here. And I do apologize for some of the PDFs because they had to be converted into PNGs for the PowerPoints. So the line weights aren't quite as clear as I would like them to be. But
Can you
over
give us
here,
the metrics of the project as well, please?
yes. So the my project is 15 units. And it is the total height is 22 feet high for the tower units. And the top of the pitch on the single story units is 14 feet. The whole project has 5,130 interior square feet. So they're actually really small units, which I think was the challenge because I'm taking this shape that's only 10 feet wide and it's 40 feet long. And so it's trying to figure out how we can make that work in a really usable way and in a way that feels really open and, nice to be in. And I think part of that is incorporating lots of these outdoor spaces and as much as possible trying to create a really strong connection between what's inside and what's outside. And I think that's the other important thing that you were really asking for in this project was this sort of diffusion from the really public spaces and the private spaces. And so we go through these different, courtyard areas and then into the more private. And then, of course, all the way back here, you have bathrooms, bedrooms. Um, and so it really diffuses, which I think is a really important part of my project. And then here is the second floor showing the little tower units. And then here we have a section cutting through. So this would be right across here, section A. And so we can see they have very high, generous ceilings, which I think is really important anytime when you're working with a smaller space. The higher ceilings really just help to open it up and make it feel less enclosed. And then here we have section B, which is running through this area right here, looking that direction. And so here we can see some of the, ladders going up to the tower units. And I think it's really interesting because I tried to put the study areas for the students because this is supposed to be student housing for Woodbury. And so I tried to put the desks in an area where they have a view from both sides of the tower, which I think was also really important. And then so here we have the first unit. So there are two different unit types. There are the L units and then there are the tower units. And within those two different types, there are the courtyard entering units and then there are the interior entering units. So this is the courtyard entering unit over here. And so I can just do a really quick run through. So kitchen is over here with an indoor outdoor breakfast area. The main living space is here, really open, bathroom here, and then a small stackable laundry unit here, and then bedroom here with the desk here to take advantage of the door there. Then this is the L unit with the interior entry. So you would enter in through here into the main living space with a small half bath, a stackable laundry unit, kitchen, main bedroom, the study area, and then the bathroom in the back. And additionally, all these areas, of course, that are green are the private courtyards. Then this is the tower unit. And so over here, we are entering through the courtyard. And this one is, very small. So I tried to get the most out of it. And it actually has a very generous laundry area here with lots of storage, which I think was another important aspect that I tried to incorporate was as much storage as I possibly could put in these without closing it in too much. Then over here is the tower unit with the interior entry. So you're entering in through here with the bathroom, which incorporates the stackable laundry unit inside the bathroom, a smaller kitchen, and then up here we have the tower unit And like I was saying, the desk is positioned here so that you can take advantage of both this window in this direction and then also this window in this direction. And then I just have a couple really quick perspectives of this. So this is a view from the front of the building, looking onto the front facade that you'd be seeing from the street. This is the side that you'd see from the adjacent parking lot. And then let's see, sorry, this got mixed up. And then this is the perspective that you'd be seeing from the sort of communal courtyard area by the wood shop, looking back to the buildings. And then I'll just end here on the overall site axonometric. Does anybody have any questions?
Sure. Is there an order?
Renee, you could jump if you'd like.
I'm still sort of kind of sort of digesting it. But I mean, it's a great little project. I think the scale works well with the site. And how big are your units, Ian? You mentioned the whole thing, but how big are each unit?
So each individual unit is, I believe, 300. Sorry, give me a second. And so it's about 340 square feet for each unit.
Yeah. Is that legal?
Yeah.
It is?
Yes.
Okay.
It is now.
Everything is legal these days.
Is this like an accessory dwelling?
No, it's unit sizes are now for housing. We're in such a crunch that there is no minimum or maximum.
Wow.
All zoning laws are changing in the state of California.
Right. And then there's no parking, right, in these projects.
Right. There is no parking. It's assumed that the parking just migrates to the lots further south, which is the entire rest of the block is parking, surface parking.
Right.
So,
No, I mean,
parking is also no longer required as well in many cases, Renee.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, if, as a school and student housing project, I think it's perfect. I mean, it works really, really well for the necessities of one person, right? And as long as I guess you keep it like that, then the project is very successful. But as you think about it as housing for another part of the demographic, well, then it's becomes difficult, right? So it becomes pretty much like a kind of a Ted Smith project where his sort of client is always the single student, right? Who can actually climb up those ladders, right?
Yes.
And so there's some, he's young, has the physical ability to do that. So what I'm trying to say is that for that particular sort of client, I think it's a good project. I'm wondering how would you extend to this to even two people living together, right? So that it becomes a much more, let's say, you can replicate the things that you did. Yeah, I mean, I think the courtyards are great. I think the courtyards really, really help to light the spaces. And the other thing I would have loved for you to sort of tell is kind of maybe narrate a kind of a day in these things. I mean, you told us like where everything is, and that's great. But I mean, what makes this housing important? How you would sort of tell a story about who uses this and how it helps them or not, or changes their way of thinking of housing. I think you need to get into that into that social aspect that I think Hector was talking about at the beginning, right? There's that social component, and that social component is probably the story of a person, who probably has a background and is able now to live next to school, or It's the first time he lives by him or her by himself. You know, it's how, what is the story of these units, and how do they present a narrative about how we live today? I think that it was missing in your presentation. Uh, Everything else was great. You told us numbers, you told us spaces. I you know, it works, but then you know you need that other sort of narrative, right?
Uh,
So
I have a general question. Maybe this is for you, Hector. What was the criteria for like the overall criteria for the number of units or any conditions?
Actually, because this was mostly geared towards a generative process of form making, I did not give a minimum. I did not give a maximum number of units. I did give a 12 unit minimum for the size of the lot. I did not give a single unit maximum or minimum size. And students are either single students, couples, or families in some cases that could actually house. And just to respond to something that Renee mentioned, is that some of these units actually have all the services and spaces are on a flat ground plane, so it could accommodate someone that doesn't need to climb up to the ladder.
Right.
right.
I want to just
I think I'm
piggyback.
also curious on some of the constraints. I think where you're going with this as well, like how to judge this. So I guess leaving it open, what analysis was put into then? How many units are here, and then is there a kind of Z constraint from zoning, or is the kind of low density that we're seeing here going to be something that prevails through the majority?
For the sake of giving the students pure freedom to explore the projects densities that they thought would be appropriate, and following the form making exercise as a driver, as a principal driver for the exercises, I wasn't really focusing on giving them zoning envelopes, maximum envelopes, because as we speak, and this is true in this whole state of California, zoning envelopes are literally becoming obsolete in the way that they used to be enforced. And now we have 200% density bonuses applied in single residential areas. So for the sake of the exercise and allowing the students to freely explore the parameters of making projects in this idiosyncratic form making way, I prefer not to give them any limitations on that. So you will see, as we progress, you will see projects that are completely much more aggressive in terms of their densities and their mass, and that's what these things. We began with this project that is actually one of the lowest impact in smaller scale projects.
And one quick follow-up: is it 100% student housing as well? So there's no.
No, it's not. It could also house student spouses. We have some military.
Sure. But nothing like market rate. It's all.
No, it's not. Yeah.
Okay.
And this is a longer conversation that I hope to have eventually, especially because Renee brought it up. Is that there's actually a lot to be learned from projects, student housing projects, to generate projects for the general public. It's a market rate affordability that this projects, in some cases like this one, I think could be a market rate affordable project.
Yeah, I mean, I guess the other thing I was just another question is what is, and this is to Bryden, what is the relationship of the project with the courtyard of the school? It seems that it seems that it's almost facing, it's on the back, almost like the back side of. How do you think about that? Do you think how it relates to that?
Definitely. I think a really important thing was to connect it to that courtyard, but also not have everything connect to that courtyard. So we have a couple of units over here in the front that enter in from the street directly. And then all of these units over on this side are entering in through the courtyard. But as you can see, most of them enter in through this sort of main, outdoor walkway. And I think I also wanted more separation for these units over here with this semi-transparent wall, so that it's not directly, you know, right next to the wood shop, which I think is another important consideration. You know, if that would help too much with the noise level or anything, I don't know how successful that would be. But I definitely wanted to separate it more as it got closer to the woodshop area. So I think it's about diffusing the relationship between the project and the courtyard, and the more communal spaces and the more private spaces.
Mhm.
Um, I just want a quick question. And by the way, hi everyone. Hey, Rene, Hector, Jose, Teddy, and students. Jose, you look like Ernest Hemingway, by the way.
That's what
And
everybody's been telling me.
yeah,
He needs to go to
very,
Cuba.
very distinguished. You need a cigar in your hand.
Renee couldn't
Uh,
supply that.
uh, actually, I just wanted to, before I lose train of thought, on Rene's comment on the appropriate scale for student, right? And Brayden, I agree. These are very pretty drawings and they're very clear. I think you expressed kind of the intent, and I guess my bigger question and the reason I asked Hector about what was the criteria for the housing development was because I guess a lot of our definition of our private space has been rocked in the last year, and how we define our private space and how we think about communal spaces. And Hector mentioned, you know, there's a lot to learn from student housing. And what I take from that is there's a lot of, or one of the last vestiges of communal housing. And I mean, it's the first project I see, so I don't mean to pick on you. I'm just saying, like, there's a lot of emphasis on the private courtyard, the private kind of like isolation of the space, and very little interaction where people actually interact, especially in a school, right? We're in studio, especially we depend a lot on how we interact with others. And I hope this is not a reflection of our current pandemic situation, but I like the layouts, but I would like to see what would be that interaction, these spaces. I don't know, Hector didn't have the opportunity to take you guys to Polo Rivera, where there's a little bit of mingling there, right?
Oh my God,
And that
yeah.
would be interesting to see in how we treat the outdoor and the communal spaces.
You know,
I would just to respond to that, I had the exact same initial response to the presentation, was the kind of inward focus of the unit. The units are, you know, they're really great. The kind of courtyard, interior, out, you know, exterior relationships kind of really opens up that kind of smaller footprint. I think it was like 350, 370 square feet. So it gives that kind of feeling of being a bigger space without being too small. But then it does feel very inward. Even when you look at the perimeter, I mean, we're kind of fixated on this drawing, and you know, you don't see much kind of outwardly focused kind of interaction. Everything's kind of into the courtyard, and then the courtyard itself is, you know, it could use a little bit more love, I would say. You know, like the kind of the rubber stamped palm trees would have liked to see like a little bit more kind of definition there for these, you know, these areas to kind of break out and, you know, to have those kind of communal interactions. And then the one thing that I really kind of caught my eye was the roof profile. From the kind of fortifying exercise kind of finding its way all the way through. But, you know, when you look at this view right here, you just see the kind of three kind of, you know, serrated roofs next to each other. And you know, those are like three different units, and you can't help but guess if that was flat and all three of those units had access to that space, right? There becomes kind of this communal roof garden that's kind of semi-public, semi-private, that's lifted off the ground. And so you have the great courtyard for like, you know, the greater public or all 12 or 15 units. And then you have these kind of shared rooftops between like 3 or 2 or 4 units, where those kind of little, that kind of vertical office space really starts to kind of serve as a connector as well. And so you can kind of break out and you have that kind of interaction as well, and that shared outdoor. And so I understand where the forum kind of is coming from, but then I question the forum's legacy and if it could do more in the kind of final proposal.
Well, I think we're gonna go to the next one for the site of for the sake of brevity. The great questions.
Great
And
project.
I hope we get to see more. Thank you, Brayton.
Thank you.
And we're going to be followed now by Andrea Posma, please.
Hello.
By the
everyone.
way, Andrea's project is the one that I illustrated the first project with. So you'll see her interest in this angular shapes comes through also in this affinity of this project.
What Hector, what year is this? I'm sorry.
This is third year, first semester, third year.
Okay.
House.
Hello, everyone. Thank you. My name is Andrea Postma, and I'll begin with my case study. We can all see the screen.
Yes.
Yes.
So my case study was Charles Correa's Kanchenjunga Apartments in Bombay. And let's see. It consisted of 32 units with 5 types. It had these really interesting, sectional qualities, and is a brutalist building made raw concrete. What was interesting about these was his use of the climate control and allowing the breezes east to west. We'll skip to. Oh. Well, hold on. Let's see. Well, I chose unit type A. I'm not sure what happened to my PowerPoint there, but chose unit type A as my starting off point.
Do you have that unit type?
This is unit type A here.
Okay.
And this was the layout and the massing and animation. And my 3 iterations. So here's the unit type A, the initial base block here.
And the operations, can you describe what they were for each one, just quickly?
Oh, yes. For my first operation, I took this shape, I skewed it, then I sheared it, and then shifted it again and stacked them all and shifted them, trying to fit them to the site. Second iteration, I first carved it, then skewed it, and then embedded those parts back into itself and then stacked those. I almost went with this iteration, but instead I chose this, where I skewed it, then carved it, and then expanded it. So this was because it filled up the site better than the other iterations, I went with this, and it had a higher density. And the actual sizes in relation to the site seemed to lend itself more to livable spaces than the other 2 designs. So this is my overall axonometric of what that iteration became. I did shift it again a little more to fit it to the site well, and then at the alley side and street side, I expanded them to create a relationship with the street. So this housing complex is 3 floors, 18 units total. There's 3 unit types. The basic unit type, which are these angular units here, has 2 sleeping lofts, is approximately 550 square feet. It contains 2 patios, a social patio as well as a workspace patio. They each have 1 bathroom and a small kitchenette. The second unit type is 700 square feet, and these are the ones facing the alley. They additionally have it's in the single sleeping area, so it'd be more suited for student couples. And the third unit type, the luxury units, 800 square feet, are facing the street side, and they also have an additional half bath in the loft space above, and a larger kitchen, and as well as a formal dining space. And on the ground floor, I also included an additional building that bridges to the school, as when it also contains a small eatery and laundry facilities over here. Next are my floor plans. So here is the ground floor. This is the eatery and laundry. These are the luxury 800 square foot units here with their balconies facing out. These four in the middle are the basic units. This is the workspace here, and then this is the social and lounge space as well, which is the larger patio, and these doors open up to the outside. And the alley facing units here. Okay. Let's see. Second floor. Oh, running out of memory. Okay, let's see. It's basically the same, except here's the second floor opens up into this bridging to the school roof. And third floor. This details the mezzanine layouts. So here you can see the alley facing units have a larger bed, single sleeping space, as well as a bathtub in the loft space. These are the basic units split like this, so each one gets a closet area. And luxury units are connected with a Jack and Jill half bathroom above. Screen. Perspectives. So it's perspective showing the patios. Oh, the workspace patio has a translucent material to diffuse the light. But these are, most lend themselves to morning light, I found in some studies. Interiors of the basic units. Back to my overall axonometric. That concludes my presentation. Thank you for any feedback.
I guess my question is the same. Is what is the relationship of the project with the courtyard of the school? How does it connect? Because of this view, I can't see that.
Oh, first floor plan shows it. So the entry into the circulation is here and here. So in order to enter and exit the building, you basically enter through the courtyard, and the eatery also faces the courtyard as well.
Okay, so that gray area is just a different surface.
Yes, that's the concrete of the structure. Yes.
Okay. And so you enter the units through the school. Was that correct?
Through the school courtyard, yes. There's a stairwell here and here, and this is the main walkway, and this is the main entrance of each unit here.
And then why is it connect? Why is there a bridge? I mean, is there going to be what's going to happen in the school roof that you need a bridge to connect it?
I was going to develop that further. Just listed as an option in the project, so it seemed to work with my layout, and I'm hoping to develop that further, but I did not.
Okay, so it just became like a terrace kind of thing then.
Right.
Hi, Andrea. Maybe I missed it, but what was the purpose of the angles in the units?
Well, it was basically taking that shape exploration and then making the units work with that shape.
So the shape exploration just came out of you were just playing with.
So Goyo, just to maybe you missed this part of my presentation, is that this exercise departs from the selection of one of the units from their case study,
Yeah,
and
Charles Correa.
they're modified. Each unit is modified in very specific ways, right? Using and once the unit is specified or is modified formally, then it's deployed to create this 3 different diagrams.
Mhm.
Right, so that unit as a diagram, it becomes the unit that the modified unit becomes the backbone for these projects. So this is how I'm forcing them to create something out of an unexpected result. Again, this is where I bet that that large learning outcome comes from having to make something credible and functional out of something that is formally challenging. At
But
the
it's
end, this
but it's, I mean, it's interesting because the first project, there was still um a you could still see the influence of the original case study, right?
right.
There was a trace that
Mhm.
was really important. This one, I don't really see it. I mean, I think that
It was not a requirement to connect it to the case study. That's the thing. Is that
I know, but
once
yeah, I'm not saying connected. I think whenever you do these types of projects, especially if you're trying to think of a case study, and there's something there's always this kind of ghost that is part of your project of the thing you of that other thing you studied, right? There's always that trace, that very what do you call it, um yeah, that haunting of that, or, that haunts your project, right? That you have that Charles Correa should be haunting this project, uh, and then so it doesn't just become an arbitrary kind of. I'm not saying arbitrary, but the let's say the formal sort of gymnastics that you did kind of took away a little bit of that, I would say, Korea-ish kind of conditions that you were able to see, and I think you was able to see. You mentioned something about brutalism. You mentioned something about the flow of air based on sort of the openings, and those are the things that for me are the ghost of that project that could have sort of been carried over. Because then what's the point, right? And then
Well,
if we're going to basically kind of add a geometry and then sort of change it completely,
Mhm.
uh, and I think it has to become some kind of graft rather than just a starting point. I don't know.
No, that would
That's
be a great studio
that's
to teach
that's
this. Unfortunately, that was not the intent of the studio. The DNA that Charles Correa's project donated for this project is something that is not a dominant DNA. It just becomes something that is hidden
yeah.
in the.
But what I'm saying is that it would have helped the project,
Oh, it would have
right?
had it been an intended uh, result. And it's unfortunate because that was a question that kept coming back from the students, and my answer was, don't worry about not making it connect literally to the previous project. This unit became a completely independent thing for
I
you to
understand, but
manipulate.
I'm not saying literally. I'm saying there is a maybe because they're still third year, but and I'm not saying you guys are still learning, but there is a conceptual sort of reading of the project that I think has value, and not a literal reading, but a conceptual reading that definitely should inform some of the moves in a much more, let's say, I would say, spatial way than just at the end having some sharp corners. You know what I mean?
Right.
I don't even have to link it back to Charles Correa's project, because it doesn't have to, but simply um, just the angle. Maybe it really didn't facilitate the flow of the unit itself. And by the way, really nice representation in the drawings. But when we get into the actual functionality of the angles in the units themselves, I think, we have to be a little careful as we move forward, and really what is the bottom line on the intention, right? So yeah, I don't need to link it, and I agree with Renee. It would have helped a little bit and to see how you kind of maximize the quality of the space. And I think by trying to separate yourself from Korea, maybe we kind of pushed it in that way.
You know what? The thing that I think would have been great, and Andrea, you opted not to do it, is the individual unit as an axonometric. So you could show the sectional quality of that might emphasize the cross air ventilation, and then your perspectives really tragically overemphasize the challenging geometry of the unit. So in every case, you really bet on the dynamic, and and ignored some of the things that I think would make it read. And as much as I agree with both the comments of Renee and Goyo, I just want to state that my intent in this exercises were mostly about how do you create something that is occupiable, functional, despite this incredibly challenging angles, right? And to me, if a student is able to resolve at the end something with these challenging things, when they get to design something, they could tone down the geometry and really become much more effective at populating and making a credible project.
Yeah, I wonder if the geometry could act more though outside of the units. I think that's going to be kind of a reoccurring comment. I think Renee's kind of hinting on that as well. The drawing that we're looking at, that sharp vertical line between the white and the gray, and then you see the kind of, the angle starting to come back through in the eatery, right? And so that kind of finds its way into the eatery, but then there's just kind of divide, like East and West Berlin or Great Wall of China or something. Like I'm in housing and then I enter into kind of school space, and I'm curious if that could become more of a gradient, and if some of the angles could find their way into these kind of communal ground plane studies. I mean, after all, this is student housing in San Diego, and so the ability to be outside, where a lot of these community spaces traditionally in dormitories, they happen at the corners, right? So where you have the luxury unit, I think you called it right now, that's facing the street, like traditionally, right, that would be kind of a shared space for the dormitories, whether that's like a shared kitchen or that's a kind of shared lounge or something in that respect. I like how you put the kitchen on there, but I wonder how, if it's not going to be there and it's all going to be housed in that bar, how does that kind of zigzag, those teeth start to kind of cut into that courtyard with perhaps like some benches or some informal gathering areas or some tree planters or something that kind of breaks up that space and kind of allows people to kind of be out there versus door to school, door to unit, and I'm just kind of like a straight line in between the two.
Well, this is precisely the problem with a project that just lands onto the site, right? And the definition of a property line as a contrasting condition, as is shown in this drawing, I think that's also a mistake in representation. And of course, so much emphasis was given to the housing project itself that it did not spend any time thinking about the leftover space. One thing that is even in this way of depicting these spaces here are actually on the ground, are the entire thing. This is completely, it does not need to have this angular thing here, right? So Andrea, this is I think my comment to you was really about the tonality of grace and the lack of connection to a lighter, more vibrant coloration that would give your project a bit more of the life that is appropriate for a student housing project. So it's something that you could actually fix this, and the extensions that are being asked and being noted by everybody, this connection to both the open space and then eventually the school, would be actually just as simple as creating extending lines and then figuring out how those extension lines could be treated differently, either on ground texture or landscape itself, right? Benches, I mean, everything could become much more deliberate and connected to the school. So it's yet work that needs to be done, and it's really an important aspect. So I do agree 100%, and I appreciate the comments.
Yeah, it's a good project. I think it's a good project. I think there has a lot to comment on. So there's a lot of work in there.
All right. Well, thank you, Andrea.
Thank you.
Let's move on to the next project.
I'll do one more, Hector. Then I have to go.
Okay. Yeah, thank you, Renee. Let's see. Can
You have to go as well, Hector.
okay. Can Misael, can you please go next?
Yes. Can you see this?
Yes.
Perfect. So my precedent is our microhousing by Simple Projects Architecture.
Oh, I've seen this project. Yeah.
Simple Project Architecture. So their slogan is simple appearance, complex experience. Their philosophy is that they believe architecture is about a connection between a building, environment, and humans, and that the three must synergize to create a balance in life. So they mostly work on private residences, offices, and schools. Principal architect is Nico Lendra, and interior designer Melisa Kotama. So this is the project, Our Microhousing. It's a modern minimalist design, basic geometric shape mass, and monochromatic color scheme. Firm Simple Project Architecture. The type is apartments. There's 5 units. Plot of land is similar to our site. It's 12 meters by about 30 meters of land. It was made in 2019, completed in 2020, so it's fairly recent. And it's located in Indonesia. The context, very densely area, kind of like San Diego, kind of. And here's the
Let's make sure that we move forward to your project as soon as
Not
possible.
even
'Cause
close
we're
to
gonna
St.
start
Betsy,
soon.
but okay.
Okay.
Okay, so this is the first plan, it's type A. Sections. Here's some pictures.
Mm-hmm.
Let's spend the time on your project, not to your unit, please.
Type B.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, perfect. So I chose type A. This is an exploded axonometric drawing. I did the units, the ones that would be red, the ones that I chose to modify. So out of the pamphlet that he gave us, what I did was fractured, I copied it, I stacked them, I mirrored it, I rotated it. This is one of the schemes. For this one, I rotated, I fractured into fifths, extruded it horizontally and vertically. For the last piece, what I did is I rotated 90, I split it in fifths. I took 1/5 of the original unit, I extruded it horizontally and vertically. I stacked and slipped them and multiplied the stack. And I kind of did the same thing I did a part 2, which is the 2 located at the front. Those are different than the ones that are the back. Okay, so the site plan. My units are located here on the right.
Can you explain what the bridging program is so that we could?
Sure, yes. So for these units, since they don't have a laundry inside of the units, on the outside, I chose to make this part of the program is laundry. Also, restaurant, or not a restaurant, like a cafeteria, courtyard, something for the students at Woodbury where they can all eat and they don't have to walk far away. Also chose to make it like rooftop accessible. So in theory, you can be here at the top. It doesn't connect to the school though, but you can be on top. And like a trestle system, so that if you want to eat outside, you can. This is the first unit, so relative to the plan, it would be the last one at the far end. And the one at the far end, something to note about it is that it lifts up. or yeah, it's up in the air. It's up. Let's get through the floor. The main entrance would be through this way. There would be stairs where you would access them from inside of the courtyard. So as you move your way up, you'd slide a gate over, and then you'd make your way into the first unit. This has the kitchen, the dining room, the living room space. There's a small half brush, half bath here as you move up. Also access to the outside, and this would be a terrace. And once again, this is on, like, it says first floor, but this is on the second floor. And it also has a second floor. Once you're up, there's a desk space. There's a desk space. This is one of those Murphy beds where you can just lay it out and it creates another place where you can rest and sleep. On that second floor, at the same time, there's a restroom, a bathroom with views to the window, views to the north, and also a mezzanine. So the mezzanine itself, if you were to go up the mezzanine, there's a little bed up there as well with a little TV and so on and so forth. And once you're on that second floor of this this unit, you can actually, once again, go back outside through this door. Oh, so now that you know that, this is what it looks like, essentially. If you go up the stairs, there would be a desk. This would be like a bookcase, window. There's a full bath in here. You can access, you can go outside through these steps. There's a mezzanine up at the top. This is the second unit. For this unit, you would enter, this one is actually is on the ground. So you could enter it this way. And here you'd have your living room, dining room, kitchen, bathroom, access to the outside here, which is a very large space, as big as the square footage of this, and another access to towards the campus at Woodbury. Go up, way up, and here you'd have a full bathroom.
Let's
You
not
have-
spend so much time reviewing each floor plan. Let's get to the axonometric so that we could really expedite the conversation, because I think the axonometrics do make a contact with the DNA of the first unit.
So then this one would
Mhm.
be the axonometric.
Mhm.
You go up, mezzanine, room, desk space, and access and views to the outside. This would be the type C. It's slightly different. So this one, instead of the room being on the second floor, the room is actually below. And the second floor is your living and dining room. The cool thing about this one that I actually like is the wall that it's cut through, that is actually designed to be a garage that when you open it, you have access to the outside. And it just opens the whole interior of the living room to the outside. This is what it would look like. This would be the first floor bedroom and the second floor. And ideally, this would open. And that's it. Thank you.
Right. I think Hector was right, and would love to see a little bit more of the massing of the project and going through the plans. We all can read plans, so you don't really have to tell us everything. If the plan is, drawn correctly, then we should be able to take a few seconds and understand the project. And I think you need to then develop a kind of a larger narrative for your project, one that talks about the intentions rather than where things are. And I think, I mean, from looking at this axonometric, I think it's really has an interesting. There's a lot of interesting sort of moves that you did there, but I have no idea why you didn't explain this those to us. So I think you sometimes you only have 6 or 7 minutes to present, and you want to tell the story, and then later we'll come back and we have questions about sizes and things. We'll get that taken. But yeah, so I'm missing that part of the idea. How did you decide to do the massing? Um, how did you break this thing up?
How did I come up with the form?
Okay, yeah,
Yeah, this is the original unit. If you rotate it on its side 90 degrees, I split it in fifth. I took 1/5, I extruded it, and I stacked, slipped, and multiplied. That's how I get all of this.
So I think, just
right.
reiterate the exercise is really a form making exercise, and then a site fitting becomes the challenge, right? And I think what I'm beginning to identify as the biggest challenge in the way the projects are being presented, it's that there's no qualitative aspect of the presentation to tell us really what the spatial qualities are, the organization of these relationships between inside and outside that was fomented and required. And because the presentations become so much about the quantification rather than the qualification, I think we're missing the opportunity to really tell a more compelling story. And that
Yeah,
might be part of
right.
my problem, but
No, but Hector, you're right. I mean, it's really interesting that they go through all this, all iterations of moves, which is very very interesting. And but at the end, you're right. What do you get, right? Is it is do you get a form that fits on the site, or do you get a differentiation of spaces, or why you multiply the stack, but that multiplication gives you the same thing, right? So why maybe the multiplication should be able to give you a different sort of condition every time you move it. So it's like sort of define the kind of the how do you define the diagram, and how do you sort of say, yeah, the diagram did what I wanted it to do. Right? It wanted I wanted the diagram to do differentiation, or I wanted the diagram to create a series of spatial conditions, or I just wanted to create different types of units. So you could also have it as a much more kind of strict mathematical way, right? But at the end, if you do all this process and you sort of just walk us through the project, showing us the the spaces, then I think there's missing that piece of what did this get you, right? What did this create for you? And I guess for Misael, that's your question. What did all this geometry articulation get for you? What did it achieve? I guess that's the question, right?
Right.
But can you answer? You had an idea?
Oh, for me, it would be like interesting spaces, something that I can see works well. So Professor was talking about this idea that the units should interact with the outside well. So by having those voids in between the units, I thought that worked well with that idea. I could have windows, I could have doors that connect to the outside and give it that outside experience. So I guess that's what resonated with this.
Yeah, so that's the things that you needed to talk about more than just walking through the plans, because that's what you got. That was your intention, and that was what all this hard work was able to perform. It's what does it do, right? I mean, what all these things do now.
Mm-hmm.
So that's my kind of my critique. I think there's a lot of work there, but at the end, I'm still kind of missing the reason. Right?
Yeah, I agree. I think this diagram that we stopped at, it feels like there needs to be like a dozen of these diagrams, right? Like part 1 and part 2, like what were the ones that didn't work out, right? Like what were the operations that you did, not
Oh
just
yeah, there was
stack
a
and
lot.
slip. Of course, I assume so, but I'm saying I think that would help us understand, right? Like there's a fitness that you're looking for to try and kind of appropriate a dorm, right? And so it's like you go too far or you go not far enough, and you start to kind of control some of these operative moves on these kind of legacy fragments, I guess, from like the kind of slicing and the extruding and the stacking and the slipping. It almost feels like there wants to be that kind of diagram taking us through, and a little bit of a kind of post-evaluation of each one, right? Like why this one wasn't appropriate, and then this is why I've arrived at this kind of proposal at the end. And I think that kind of understanding of the process would kind of help ground us a little bit in how we're critiquing it. And I think to Renee's point, like the floor plans, yeah, we could read floor plans, right? But I think this slide becomes very clear, and I think this kind of part two, just like down in the left corner, like that corner element that kind of starts to have some of its own unique characteristics, right? And I kind of missed what was happening in there. I assume it's some of the shared spaces, but I almost want to see like how did more part twos happen? How did more of these aggregations arrive versus like the kind of copy and paste Lego project, right? Like that corner piece to me seems like it has, the most potential in this project, and I'd love to see kind of more of those the operations that created that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think moving forward, for the sake of clarity and brevity, I'd like to ask everybody to present the most brief way that your case study. And instead of concentrating on describing the floor plans, I would love for everybody that presents from now on to talk about the qualities of the project, the things that you fell in love with, the things that are driving your decisions. And this, and the question that has remained unanswered, perhaps by that Goyo and Teddy and Renee have made, is this communal quality that housing adjacent to a school of architecture, student housing, requires to have that middle. So in my requirement for this project, it was the 3 scales of engagement: the personal outdoor engagement, right, which seems that everybody has gotten; the communal, which is within the community of school; and then the public, and that program that begins to emphasize or open up itself to public engagement. Those things are only very few projects open their projects to that. So let's make sure that from now on we spend a little bit less time in talking about the floor plan and really looking at the 3-dimensional representations that everybody was supposed to have of the project. Okay. But thank you, Misael. A lot of work, like Renee says.
Yeah, good job. Hector, I got to go, but
okay.
Sorry.
Any last comments, Renee, before you depart?
Great. I like the studio a lot. Those that first exercise, I wish I would have seen it, or looked amazing. Yeah, and then this project, the way you lead into it. So from that personal space all the way to these communal spaces, and it's a great studio. I'm doing a housing studio next semester, so I'm glad you invited me to this, because it's really great to see. I'm gonna steal some of your ideas. But it's great. It's really great. So then, good job for everybody.
All right, thanks a lot, Renee. Let's
See you guys.
Let's find out what your schedule is this break, and we'll see you when you get here.
Okay, vamos.
Gracias.
Ciao.
Samantha, can you go next, please?
Yes. Can you see the screen?
Yes.
Okay. So the case study I chose is the V Apartments in Vietnam. So this building makes use of narrow spaces by manipulating vertical spaces, resulting in double heights, skylights, and overall more ambience. In addition, windows are placed strategically, so when somebody enters the room, nature is the first thing they see, juxtaposing the urban setting. In this section view, it is clear to see the importance of manipulation of vertical spaces in narrow buildings. So the unit that I chose, this is the unit that I chose, and I chose to manipulate it due to the plane verticality, the interlocking of common spaces, and the private spaces. So this taller shape being the public, more public program. So this is the shape that I chose to manipulate. Can you see this one, the axon, or no?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah,
So this is the manipulation of the original unit from the case study. So the overlap displacement movement is meant to generate a transition from private to public by creating a porosity that results in patios and courtyards. The tapering movement is meant to provide light throughout the entire second floor units. And the demographic for this project are architecture students, and we need light for wellness and for studio work, or to go crazy. So the units at the top are 20 feet tall. The units at the bottom are 12 feet and 9 inches tall. And the larger units, which are 18 feet wide, that are right here, are meant to zoom in, are oriented to face the north, which is proven to provide the best studio lighting. In the smaller units, which is the same shape as the larger one, just compressed, are 12 feet wide, which face the east, which isn't the worst lighting, but not as bad as having it south. So here are some 3D, and I'm sorry for the horrible quality, but here are 3D prints of the shapes that I made, so I would have a tangible idea of how they would work. So this is the overall axon, and this sort of like showing this little diagram here in the corner, which is meant to show the gradation from private to public space, the dense hatching being more of the public areas, and the less, the more public it becomes. So here you can see that there's very little private areas, and that is because that is just to promote like studio culture within the residential areas as well. And the semi-public areas here in between are meant to promote wellness by allowing trees and plants to proliferate, and community as well. So there are 13 units in total, plus a laundromat for tenants only. And there is exterior circulation that connects all the units, and there are stairs on either side, or both sides, and you'll see it more clearly in the floor plan, that connect all of them. So this is the first floor, and our school culture runs parallel with the location it is in, which is Barrio Logan, which is a social, lively neighborhood full of taco shops, bars, coffee spots, which highly influences the studio culture here. And to respect the context, in addition to the existing courtyard condition in front of the wood shop, placing a commercial program that follows the same rules as the residential program, but with a little more freedom to promote public interaction, was placed right here. This is supposed to be like a taco slash bar place, and the tables in the back here could double, maybe during daytime could double as maybe more studio space for students if they want to work outside. But I'm not sure if that would actually work in real life, but maybe keeping some parts of this program open and some parts of it closed could help it work more symbiotically with the existing conditions. So this would be the main entrance of the commercial space, and then there's a bar here, and then an outside bar here, and then this would be the kitchen space, bathroom, and then it opens up to the back here, but it could also close when the space needs to be more private. And then this is the first floor units, which are the more simpler box units. There's no tapering happening here. So basically, you would walk in, and then there's a window right here with planters placed where all the windows are at, so it would sort of cover the urban, like too much urban. And then there's a loft right over top of the kitchen and the bathroom. So the ceiling heights here are low, but as you keep walking through, the ceiling heights doubles. Plus there is this backyard space, so that connects to creating more open areas and public community areas here. And then all of these are just the same exact one just generated. So the second floor, oh no, this is the loft of the first floor units. And I was having kind of a hard time. So I don't want, the idea was for there to be roommate situations, so that there was kind of an issue of how to separate it. In the larger unit, there was closets here in between that helped create a separation of the two people that would be living in the loft. But in this smaller space, it was more difficult to figure this out. But this is how it looks like. This is the second floor. And I'll start off by showing you the largest unit. So this is the largest unit, and it is 752 square feet. And the same principle from the first floor units follows through with all of them. You walk in and there's a loft space here, and then as you go more towards the living room, it doubles, the ceiling height doubles, and there's large windows here. And then there's windows here placed to face on the courtyard spaces that were generated. However, I did run into a problem here as well with this patio here because it's south facing. So just like in my case study where they solved that by using planters and patio space as a buffer. Did the same thing here. And then there's some counter spaces that go out to the patio space. And then this is the same, this is the smaller unit. However, something that happened just naturally was that the large unit got a smaller patio space, and then the smaller one got a larger one. So I thought that was kind of cool because it helps even out the experience of living in these two kinds of units. So there's no like hierarchy of, oh, the more expensive one gets all the best experience. And then this one as well, it has a courtyard space. As soon as you walk in, you see the nature. As well as the bathrooms, they all have windows or on top or above the sink. And this is the loft space for the second floor. And then this one would have the 2 beds, and then this one would have 1 bed. And maybe thinking about maybe having Murphy beds. So on this single unit, so this could double as studio space. And then these are the individual units. This is the largest one in Axon view. And the second one, and then the first floor unit in Axon view. And then this is this entire site plan. And the reason the roof looks like this is because it's supposed to be corrugated metal painted white to reflect the heat. And then this is the section view. And then this section view is just mostly meant to showcase how the exterior spaces would be generated. And then this one's meant to showcase how the light could travel across one unit. And then these are just some perspective shots, how it would look like. And then this one, and that's it.
Cool. Thank you, Samantha. Just quick comment hearing you talk about before you got into the units. I think it's the first time I hear somebody talk about studio culture and how that affects the use of the space. You mentioned how you transition from the public kind of like communal spaces to your private space. And even though Hector mentioned you don't necessarily required to follow through the essence of the case study, you can clearly see that intention of emphasizing greenery and not only greenery, but how that affects the view of the feeling of the unit, right? In that case, I think it was successful. So I'm really happy to see the outcome. I mean, even the tapering, which was the geometric approach here, it complements the idea of letting light in there. So everything you mentioned had an intention and it's applicable to the units. So, you know, I congratulate you on that. I think it's a very, um, I don't want to say simple. It's not simple, but it's a very thoughtful approach into housing. If I had a critique, it would be similar to the first project that we talked about was um, this high emphasis on that private space, which I don't know, you guys are students. This building technically is for you. So then how we would use it. And I think you mentioned the use of that space, but I appreciate that. And I don't know, I'll leave it at that.
You know, Goyo, the necessity to have an open space, private space for each unit has become a paramount requirement for housing under the current situation.
Definitely.
It has become the only sense of relief that many people have. And now I've become more committed to it than any time. You know, we just broke ground on that 40-unit project in Barrio Logan, Los Patios, and every single one of those units has its own little private outdoor space. And man, I'm telling you, this is sort of, I think it's for health reasons. Even beyond the pandemic, I think we should all be thinking about in Southern California making housing obey that request.
Definitely.
Yeah, I think I enjoyed the presentation. I think just a couple tips. They kind of mousing around on the PDF it's a little hard to follow for us.
Sorry.
So like when you're going around, and then everyone's ending on a money image, and I think that's it's this Axon view. But perhaps just open up the pages to the left on the PDF. So maybe if there's like something that we kind of slightly remembered that we saw in one of the drawings, we could kind of reference back and be like, can you click on that page to see it? I think, it's hard going through, especially when you're mousing. It's like, wait, what was I looking at there? What was I looking at there? For us kind of coming in cold. So that's just kind of a recommendation for everyone. I think, these digital platforms, there's better mediums to be doing these final reviews, but I kind of think the money shot's good, but it's also good to actually see maybe an array of like the kind of 7 slides that you showed us so that we could talk about maybe clicking to another slide and we could discuss that. Because I think a lot of the comments is anchored based on this Axon view. I think, we keep talking about public space, we keep talking about enclosure. It's because this is like one of the things that we kind of we land on, and then it kind of seeds the discussion. In that manner, I like your operation of the taper. So like the taper, the kind of action of that happening to create that kind of loft space. I'm curious, could the taper have happened in more spots, right? Could it have given you more? Like, could it happen in some of these patio spots? Could it happen in other directions? Could some of these windows be tapered as well versus just kind of punctured? And so I question that operation as an original massing operation. It could have been kind of appropriated more finer and the final kind of the final proposal. These square windows sometimes just feel a little out of place, especially in this view. The ones that are kind of facing us in the kind of upper right just kind of feel like they're poked in there, maybe because of a response to what's happening on the inside, but maybe the window itself there could taper and kind of match that angle, right? And kind of feel like it belongs a little bit more on that facade versus just the kind of punched opening. How many total units are there again?
13.
13, and it's double occupancy, was that right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, these felt like pretty amazing units. Like looking at them, I don't even know if like I could afford a unit like that currently. And so like I start to wonder in terms of scale, like when you were mousing around, there seemed like a lot of white space. I think they were nicely drawn in terms of the entourage and the furniture and the planting, but they just seemed a little overscaled for student housing, if that's one kind of critique. And I'm curious if it can become more occupancy, you know, if they're going to be this size, could it be, you know, like a four-person unit, maybe double the occupancy? I know I lived in a four-person unit undergrad, and it was probably smaller than those two-person units, right? So I start to question that. I know, you know, times are different these days, but just the amount of exterior space and pure shared space seems pretty large for a student unit.
Good comments. You know, for me, Samantha, your project it illustrates a lot of it hits a lot of the requirements that I really wanted to be addressed. And one of the primary ones is really this three different scales of three different types of outdoor space. I agree that density in terms of number of occupants per unit could have been explored. But even at this rate, you know, having 12 units in a lot this big, it's a medium density. It's not a high density project. So for the future, I think exploring a bit more dense or multiplying the number of residents per unit in creative ways would have been a fantastic way to deal with it. I really appreciate how you engage the public through the communal and into the school. So that whole filtering of programs and outdoor and functions seem to be very, very appropriate for this location and for this program. So I really appreciate it. Let's go. Thank you so much, Samantha. Let's go to Eric, please. I think Eric offers an interesting, a bit more dense, perhaps, project.
All right.
Again, let's try to minimize the time spent on the case study so that we could really get into the projects themselves.
Okay. Everyone see this? Okay, so hello, my name's Eric, and this is my project 3. So the case study I did was by Ariel Jakubovich and Oficina Productura. It's Tetris Homes in Buenos Aires. And it was completed in 2014. It's about 8,400 square feet. And it was a small project for the architect, and OPA was the developer. It's 10 units of residential, 1 retail frontage. These are some of the drawings that the architect had. And what he wanted to emphasize was kind of like the playful stacking of Tetris units, as well as the floor plans. Here, everything is tied in with one central staircase so that all the residents could feel connected visually to each other. And these are the units that were in that project. And the one I want to emphasize is unit 10, the one in orange. This is the one that I took further into the next portion. So here it is. So forms. So one of the forms that I attempted was I took the base structure and split it into parts. I then flipped and rotated the parts around and then attached them and created a form. This form didn't really work out as well because all the units were kind of oversized and a little too big for something like student housing. So the next iteration I attempted, I took the base and split it, and then I sheared the units and then reattached them. This one also didn't work out as well because it created little narrow spaces that just weren't usable. So the third one I attempted, I split it again. I rearranged the pieces, kind of flipped them around, turned one of them vertical, extruded a piece, and then attached them. So this is the form that I took on later to create what is my project 3. So my project 3, I'm calling it Camino Studios. And the reason I chose this name was that all of these units are kind of like studio spaces, while at the same time it provides a pathway from the parking lot towards the school. where I put in the word Camino. So here's one of the isometric views of the project. And here is from the other side. And this is from the site view. So this project, there's a total of 22 units, and these units range from either single bed units to up to 4 beds. And then on top of that, I also redesigned the landscape between the school and the housing to kind of incorporate everything together. So it's a lot more clear on the next floor plan, where you can see there's 3 main passageways you can walk through from the parking lot all the way to the school. The one that I wanted to emphasize the most was this lower one here, because it leads right to the door. It leads right out to the parking lot. And then what I wanted to do was create kind of like social spaces in between to create a buffer between the private housing spaces here and the very public school here. On top of that, the landscaping up here is to create a sort of like a sound barrier from the wood shop to the housing, and then retain all of the current features of that lot, such as that small basketball court, all the gates down here, and then create an opportunity for some sort of school sign or school logo to be put in. On top of that, this bottom unit here was designed to be a gym that could open up to this larger lawn space and this little extra path space for natural ventilation, outdoor activities, and also bring together students. So the next set are floor plans, and I know we're not supposed to really dwell on them as much. This is floor 3, this is floor number 4, and floor number 5. So out of these units, there are 3 main styles, and then each one has an upper variation and a lower variation.
Configurations, Eric.
Yeah, configurations. So this one here is the paddle fin unit. It's a single bed, much taller unit. It has a patio out towards the side. And with the diagram here, you can see where that unit appears throughout the building. The next one is the taller unit. It has a much larger patio space and a trellis. It is featured at the very top of the structure. This one here is the little L units. These have 2 beds and this patio space facing towards the south end. And what's special about this one is that I wanted to split workspaces on the downstairs and living, eating, and social spaces on the upstairs. The same goes with this one. The patio space on this one is towards the school side. So these quad units have 2 bunk beds and a patio space towards the parking lot. They enter through the alleyway and are a lot more balanced in kind of social working and resting. Again, with the upper configuration, it's about the same. Patios towards the south end, and they enter through a upper walkway. The very front of the building has configurations where it's a single bed. They go up through a ship ladder. There's own private patio, own kitchen, and they enter through this little back hallway here. And with the corner unit, it's about the same, except there's just an extra fence planter barrier for the end. Now this is the gym. The door opens all the way out for natural ventilation and has a door towards Main Street for the public access. Here's a quick section to show that all the stairs in this form are directly stacked on top. There's walkways for the second floor here. The third floor is up here. And the fourth floor is only a small walkway directly towards the unit. And with this, there's a lot of kind of like playfulness between the levels as well as the walkways. And here it sort of creates kind of like this quilt-like pattern-like design.
Tetris quality.
Yeah. All right, so this is for just to show where the next set of perspectives are from. First one is down here by the gate. Second one is the open area of the gym. The third will be the second floor. The fourth will be towards the back alleyway looking towards the front. And the fifth is the parking lot. So here it is from that gate. And ideally the landscaping here, based on the geometry from the interior wall of the school with the existing pathways that already are still there, would ideally create social spaces for people to gather, have lunch at, maybe just chill out for a few minutes. Here's from the gym's outdoor space. This is from the second floor hallway. This is from the very back towards the alley looking towards the front gate. It gets very shaded in this area during the day, so it would allow for a lot of opportunities for students to cool down and relax. And the last one I have here is from the parking lot looking towards the building. And that is Camino Studios.
Thank you, Eric.
It seems to, hi Eric, it seems that you said 22 units?
Yes.
Yeah, it has a better sense. The scale seems more appropriate, no, Hector?
Yeah.
Just for the amount of units you get, it's almost double as the previous, and it doesn't look that much heavier in mass, right? I appreciate your effort to not only stack them like Legos, but really figure out the location and the better quality of the space. So that's interesting how they interlock. You mentioned that exercise that Hector has about splitting and manipulating the form, and that it didn't work out, and you had to go back and do another one just because the spaces were too big. Is that right?
Yeah, so one of my first designs, each unit was more than 1,500, and that just seems a little unreasonable.
Yeah.
And then my second design was like it created these little gaps that were just unusable.
Mm-hmm. Right. So that's good that, recognizing that something is not working and redoing it in a way and making that work. Another observation from your perspectives, I think you can appreciate the space a little better is by really keeping it as a linear mass, you really open up that courtyard, and it complements the school volume wise. So it doesn't feel cramped in a way. So I think you can really get a sense of the scale of the housing. At the same time, kind of open up the center so there's a little bit of breathing room, which I think is a good touch.
Yeah, that's actually a really good comment there, because despite this being a really tall building, the separation that you push the building all the way to the edge of its property line really allows this space to breathe nicely.
Right.
Even the way that you detach the stairs to be kind of just vertical structures on their own, that further emphasizes that openness quality of that space. So it's a really intelligent moves that were made.
One thing I would say, just to be complete, is you mentioned how dark it could be at the corner there under the units and I guess it's the northeastern part of your building. I think a big role in that is the massive structure that is the vertical circulation. And if you would have more time, maybe think about how you really get away with
Two.
two, and linking that last floor, and that would really open up the center of your building. And it's a massive structure there. It just takes away from the building.
That was my first reaction, if I'm going to be fully transparent, Eric, is as soon as you started your presentation, I was like, whoa. Like that first image of it put together, I'm like, are those 3 stairs? Like, is that necessary for a building of this scale, right? It's scare, and I think you should take a stance on that, right? I think if you feel those 3 stairs are absolutely necessary, I would exploit them, and maybe the stairs become more of the kind of communal space, and maybe to become a larger element, right? Versus right now, they're still kind of drawn or designed to be kind of efficiency, right? Like kind of fire stairs, like get from top to bottom as efficient as possible. But I would start to think of it, how can I do more of an experiential circulation, right? Like you definitely have the fire stair, but then those other 2, right, you could actually explore at the scale of this project. Perhaps it does become one, but perhaps it becomes, multiple coming together. And so like the project I'm thinking of is like the Gifu apartments, right, in Japan. And so like that idea, just because they have the porosity like you have as well, but the idea of the staircase kind of zigzagging up the facade and then basically having these pause moments where it doesn't connect, right? So like at certain floors, you almost have to interact with people before you go back up versus just the kind of the vertical kind of stack circulation. And so I would take a look at that project. I think there's a lot of potential for you in that respect, and how do they become more of a communal space versus just a circulatory like function, because they are so present. And I think you've done a great job in the unit layout. I really enjoyed the axon kind of ghosted views where you kind of removed the wall, we kind of looked into it. It really allowed us to get into it a lot more than perhaps some of the plans we've seen in the past presentation. So it was really, really great to see that, next to the plans and kind of visualize the kind of ghosted view and how the actual unit itself operates. I thought that was a really nice means of presentation. And perhaps again, this is due to the platform, but I think that those axon views could use a little bit more line weight. They just felt overall very loose, and so they feel, kind of like a screenshot versus a drawing. And so like I'm curious if they could start to become a drawing and have some intentionality to the use of the line weights. And then I think they'd really start to pop, because things that you don't want to see, like some of the walls, will fade away more, and things that you really want to kind of emphasize a little bit more heavier line weight, and it'll kind of read more than just this kind of, I call this a jellyfish view, right? Because you're kind of like looking through it, some things get overlapped and lost, and some things become clear, right? And so, the amount of them is great. So the fact that you produce so many, so I understand the time that would go into cleaning those up post-production, but I do think that it would be worth it for your final portfolio. But yeah, overall, just I think a clear presentation. I understood the project, from the get-go. Kind of walking us through the operations formally and the slits and how the kind of porosity was born. I think it's great. The next thing I think you could really look at if you go back to your axon view is the unfortunate like paint by numbers right now for the units.
Yeah.
The kind of purple, yellow, gray. I know that's used hopefully for kind of representation purposes, but not in terms of actual architectural finishes. And so I hope that perhaps there could be another kind of look into language at night, start to emphasize those beyond color, right? In terms of, paneling, in terms of, banding, in terms of, stucco and homogeneous, like there could be something that could be used more than just color.
Yeah, I think that was a conversation we left out, unfortunately, because of time constraints. But in Eric's case, one of the things that Eric, you would greatly benefit from studying some color theory,
Right.
and be a little bit more bold. And the tonalities of every color that you've applied to your project seems to be extremely muted, and in this beigey kind of realm that is not conducive to excitement. And this has to be foremost an exciting project. There's formally, it's very exciting, but the color kind of reduces that level of freshness and excitement that one would imagine happens in a place like this. But thank you. It's a really complete project, and I really appreciate it. By the way, those axonometric of unit with plan was a requirement for everyone. I hope more people have them. Thank you, Eric.
All right, thank you.
Monica, can you go next, please?
Yes.
Monica?
One second. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Give me 1 second. Okay, so for my cases, and well, hello, my name is Monica, and for my case study, I chose Nexus World Housing, and by the architect Rem and Colas, and then it's located in Japan. It's a residential housing built in 1991, and these housings and consists of 24 units. Each one are 3 feet high, and each unit is connected by an internal corridor that has like and introduces light and space into the center of each house. So as we can see here is a lot of lighting, and then there is 2 blocks of 12 units each. And from my case study, I chose the unit A. So there is 24 units, and I chose unit A, which is one in the corner, and then we can see this one right here. So this is the unit that I chose, and it's a 3 bedrooms and unit. From that unit, I start with an exploration of masses and programs of how they work. So this is the first one that I chose. And I mean, this one is the first one that I did. And so this is the unit. I shifted, I moved it, I added a square, I like I added okay a square, I rotated, and then I stacked them. So this is the first one that I did. This is the second one. So as well, this is the unit, and I shifted, and then this one I scaled and I stacked them all together. And this is the final one that I did. This one is the one that I ended up using. This is the unit, and then this one I used a skeleton, and then I added a little and a space underneath, and I stacked them together. And I like the idea from my case study to have a communal space and to have outdoor, indoor, and okay, so outdoor, indoor, and then lighting getting through each unit. So, and I like the idea of the central and how can the central courtyard that divides the units. So I took the idea from my case study to and from a program that I chose. And let's see, I think this is my ason- asonometric and drawing. So this is the complex, and this is a complex, and then this is the school. I I decided to leave this space as a public space, a communal space, because since I have already all these units all stacked into each other, didn't want to add, I didn't want to add any more of the unit. Okay, so a little bit about the project, and this project is 24 unit, and is the building is 40 feet, 45 feet high, and I have four kind of unit on this complex. So in here, and I have the first floor plan, and okay, so I have the first floor plan. So, how can I explain it? One of the units is in 2 floors, and the rest of the unit has only 1 floor. So this is the first floor, and this is and how you enter and go up the stairs. But and from the first floor, and this is the first floor for the first unit. So you enter the house, and then you go up the stairs to go to
Monica,
the,
don't explain this on this drawing. Explain it on your unit drawings, please.
okay. So this is the
Okay, so
second
let's
floor.
just show 1, 2, 3, and then let's just look at the unit layout, because I
And
think
then
the complex.
this is okay. So this is the first unit. And so as we can see from, and this unit is in 2 floors. This is the only one. This one is about 545 square feet. So you enter in the first unit, and then you go upstairs, and then from you go upstairs, you land right here, and you enter then this room. Each unit is, in all 24 units, is only a single bedroom, since it's an student housing. And in each unit, my main idea was to create an outdoor and indoor space. So from this unit, I created a patio. From the first unit, as we can see here, this is the patio. and and as we go up, and I use this spade as an outdoor and a space as well, that you enter from here. And then this one is facing the school. This side is facing the school, and then this side is facing the other unit. So that's why I made it this. And okay, so this is my second unit. The second unit is on the third floor. So, and from here as well, my main point was to create an outdoor area for each of the units. So from this unit, you enter right here. This is on this side is going to be the inner courtyard. So from this unit, you enter right here, and then there is the room. The kitchen is okay right here. Okay. So from this unit, you also, this one is the one facing the street, and then this one is the one facing um facing the parking lot, the other side of the complex. So and instead of entering from this side, we will enter the unit from this side, and it still have an outdoor like a balcony outdoor space. So this is the third unit, and this third unit is in the fourth floor facing the school. As well, I and I created an outdoor space. This unit is 430 square feet. So it's really small, but it's still functional for a student. And all of my units are created for um, students. Like, that's my main idea. That's why I create like small units with and functional spaces. All of them have a kitchen and bathroom and a bedroom space, and as well as an outdoor space. And this
Don't
is
worry
the
to
last
describe that.
unit.
We could all see what is in the plan. So let's just look at them,
Okay.
and then we can get to the comments. This goes for
Okay.
everyone, please.
So this one is the fourth. Okay, this is the last unit, and it still have an outdoor space. And that's it. That's kind of my presentation. And I have a kind of a picture of the massing of how it looks. I was just trying to get it, but my computer, I don't know what's going on, but that's how kind of an idea of how the complex looks. This is the first unit. This is the first unit and second unit, third unit, and the fourth unit in the back. And all of them have an outdoor space.
So Monica, just
And
like
then
I've been
yeah,
saying all along, when you take those screenshots of your digital model, put your camera on the ground so that we could see it as not as a bird with a horizontal on top of the roof. We want to see them as experienced, like the previous ones that Eric showed. Okay.
okay.
Images from the circulation interior courtyard would have been really nice, as well as the one that you just showed, but from the ground.
Yeah.
Monica, where is the vertical circulation again?
Where is the what?
The vertical circulation.
Oh, and it's right here in the middle of the dividing. I have 12 units on this side and 12 unit on this side. So this is the vertical and circulation. And then that's how you access each unit from here. And then this one is the stairs, the staircases and here in the front.
There's only one staircase.
Yeah, there's only one staircase.
Well, that's wrong.
right here, right?
Yeah, I think you missed that memo that you need to have two means of egress from every floor, Monica. And at one point you had both on this side and on that side. And then at one point you migrated one of them to the middle, which is fine. But I think you migrated the one in the front to the side, but then I don't know how you lost the one that you had in the back. But in either case, that's a mistake. And also graphically, you needed to show a much larger layout of that plan.
Okay.
I think you could still rescue that in your retouches.
There is room for you to add, right, the vertical circulation. Even in the front there's some
like
space there.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's a good example of how we get so ingrained in the layout of the units and how they're going to work as a group that we kind of omit a lot of how you get there, right? What's the feeling from the ground? How does it relate to the environment, right? The way you represent the project in general is very disconnected from its context a little bit, right? And I think taking that into consideration when you develop projects, I think is going to help you a lot to develop the interior. They're always connected, right? To go beyond where the building sits, that the site will inform you, right? It would have helped you with the circulation. It would have helped you attach it in a way, relate to the school, right? Some sort of connection. Not that you have to, but at least to consider that link to the street, to the public right of way. So it's good to kind of, I understand you guys get in this tunnel vision of delivering what is required, but zoom out a little bit sometimes and really take everything in. That would be my recommendation. But I think the units are well thought of. You thought of how they work, so I would just think of that for their future.
Yeah, I think that's kind of spot on, right? I think it's very kind of individual block concentrated and not so much the kind of post aggregation. What does it give me, right? Just this view, I think, again, like when you look at how it's facing the street, right? There's not a single window, right? It's just kind of very much like this is a result of me stacking these units up, and I haven't kind of considered that street facing is, a different facade than this kind of adjacent, parking. I think that's a parking lot. Sorry, haven't been there, but I think that, yeah, exactly. That area is, you're looking at a parking lot versus the street, and that seems more articulated. And then this is a common mistake, right? But there seems to be a lot of concentration on the hand railings, right? There's like this kind of angled motif, I think, that kind of maybe found its way into the project somewhere. And it looks like it kind of got turned horizontally for the main vertical stair. But then in this view, the only thing I see are like the black handrails, right? Because they just become the most detailed. And then you look at like the School of Architecture, it's like, wow, even the School of Architecture mechanical systems has more detail than my building, right? And so it's like that kind of question of representation. You should start to see that and start to kind of maybe fade the line weights of the hand railing so that they're, you know, very light in this view, and then perhaps to think about, okay, well, what's the roofscape versus the kind of vertical facades versus like east facades versus the west facades versus the north facades. How do I want to sort of differentiate those slightly, right? And I think right now that's a result of you very much only looking inward, right? And then we see in this view these doors. So like the kind of the like, you know, tack. I think I'm erasing, but I'm trying to draw. I don't try and draw here, but yeah, like there's that door, there's that door, there's that door, there's that door, right? And it's like, okay, well, what is happening between those doors, right? That kind of long hallway with very, you know, far spacing. You know, there's a lot of opportunity to actually start to program, you know, what's happening between these, what's happening here, what's happening here. Could those walkways be joined together, and could they be kind of a shared front yard or front patio of some respect, right? And, you know, perhaps have a little bit of a threshold besides just a blank wall, right? The kind of blank wall is, you know, I get it's a privacy concern, but there's many different ways that you can address that you could still have some porosity in terms of materiality, in terms of screening, in terms of vegetation that can start to populate those surfaces and kind of really make that a place that you want to be versus a place you're just moving through.
Yeah, I think you guys both hit it right on the nose. Monica remained too much in the resolution of the units, that she didn't really explore much the connection to the overall site. A simple move, you know, like the one that I just suggested with that red arrow of flipping the whole project to the front, so that this side is facing the front, would have given a much nicer street frontage, right? The second stair would have been great to put it in the back in that case, so you could have, you know, your stairs be literally there if they were in the back, and you would have a much better, and then spending more time really looking at the internal circulation that you have in this building and exploring it as a design element, as a natural light, natural ventilation exercise would have been really fantastic. But again, your emphasis on just resolving the unit itself prevented you from making this larger complex or this larger connections to the overall context of your building. So it's unfortunate, but I think in some cases you did some really good, really good moves with the way that those units are resolved. And I think it's also a good move to have left the large void in between them. You have plenty of mass with that building.
Yeah, I focus too much on each unit, and then when I place them together, I was like, oh, I need connection with the school. I need connection with the site. So
you need connection within that internal circulation space.
Yeah.
So those are issues that hopefully you will deal with in the next couple of days, and we'll talk about how you resolve those. Okay, but thank you, Monica. This was good.
Thank you.
Let's see, Sara, can you go next, please?
Yeah, sure.
Hector, I gotta go in the next 15 minutes, but
okay, can you do Sara's last presentation?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, thank you, Goyo. Daddy, you and I are going to have to bring in the end. Thank you.
Okay, so hi, my name is Sarah, and for the case study, I went with the 102 dwellings in Madrid, and honestly, like I was attracted to this one because mainly like the shifting they had and like the shifting of volumes between like each like unit that they had and like how they distinguished between each unit. They had basically 1, 2, and 3 bedroom units, and like that's basically what the massings were all about. And then I kind of went in and like sorted them out and masked it out, like to figure out like where the floor plans were and what the shifting like meant, like what the reasons for them were. And then like I went ahead with the 1-bedroom floor plan because I just felt that there would be more opportunity for me to like go forward with it from the project. And then I started with the iterations, and for the first one I kind of like expanded it, rotated it, and I was like I was trying to honestly like manifest the like shifting that was in the basically the project that I started with, like the case study. So that was my first try. And then the second one, I kind of like went in and shifted it more and stacked them up together. And this was my third one, which was the one I went with actually. So I kind of like went with like wedge and then like shifted volumes. And then this is what I came up with basically. So it turned into this like wedge complex with kind of like indoor, outdoor, like a mix between indoor and outdoor spaces. And it's basically the same unit multiplied like 24 times. And it's 3 floors. Each floor is 15 feet, and then it's a total of 45 feet in height. Basically, what I was trying to go for is just kind of like simple circulation, 2 stairs, like for vertical circulation, and then like kind of like 2 platforms that connect both volumes together. And then going with the floor plans, it was just alternating. It was a challenge where like to enter from. So I made it so that I had like cantina doors for the where like the green space was on the inside towards the walkway, and then like I had just regular doors going into the like place for like the ones that were facing the like for the where the wider side was facing the walkway as well. And then mainly I wanted to make like a connection with the roof of the school. So I decided from like the second floor, you can go and take this kind of like sort of bridging, and then there would be like seats and tables, like kind of tables and chairs. I'm still kind of gonna develop more on that, but I was just thinking of like some like social aspect of it, of like an outdoor social area for students to like meet up. And then so it's basically all the same floor plan that we see over here. It's just a matter of like if it's from one side you enter from here, and then if it's from the other side like you enter from there. And basically what I wanted, like I had the bottom floor was mainly just like living room, dining, kitchen, and then like a small like study room with like a Murphy bed in case anyone wanted to sleep there. But it was mainly like a study room, and then upstairs would be like the 3 main rooms that you go up to with a ladder, and then like kind of like cantilevered desks, and then like wardrobes and storage for them. And then outside is just like a simple patio with like grass and like tables and chairs. So like there's like a kind of like connection between indoors and outdoors. And mainly like the main reason why I had them alternating between like one facing one way and like the like so like here like the alternating faces is because of like there's like a difference from like it's gonna be like kind of like a preference of like going into a space. It's like a different feeling like going into this space, and it's like opening up, like it's like opening up inwards, and then like from here it's like it closes in, sorry, it closes in, but then like you have like the open cantina doors which like also open to the outdoors. So that's kind of what I was going with. And yeah, that's it for my project.
the question that Teddy asked is a very good question. Are the ladders code compliant? As long as the mezzanines are less than 7 feet, they're considered storage spaces. And as storage spaces, you could access them through ladders. That's a trick that we have been using in housing in San Diego for a while. It's one that I use in every project, and it pays off. You're able to produce more. So that's something to share with both Teddy and Goyo, because this is something that I explained to the students, that's a magical number, right? Make it so that it's not technically an occupiable space. You pass it as a storage space, and then you throw the beds on top.
Yeah, my mezzanines were 6 feet in height.
6 feet. Okay.
Yeah.
What's the total height of your building, Sarah?
45 feet.
So, okay. So I guess what I'm missing, what I would love to see is, and there's plans of it, but it's it's almost like that axon view with the ladders and that in between space. It seems like if there's 3 ladders going up, I'm curious, like right now, because the rooms are all separated, right? Like if you go back to that one, I think there was one view that didn't really show it, but I'd be curious how I mean, do you need 3 ladders, or at that point can you
it was just
make,
2 sets
make a
of
single?
ladders
Was that
for the
right there?
The
This view.
unit, the
Okay.
unit.
Yeah.
Oh, so it's like 1 ladder in the middle and 1 ladder here in the middle, like so here and here.
So instead of, like, I think Teddy's question is, why 2 ladders? Why not 1? And I think the answer is because there's a void in between that could have been bridged, right?
That's
And
that's where I was
right?
going with it. It feels almost like I'm walking the plank, right? Like there's like these 2 like kind of jumping off points, and then there's like ladders. I'm curious, and that like this view skews that middle, and it feels like that middle with the couch could be a pretty nice space, right? And so I'm curious how perhaps that could be rearranged more than just 2 ladders, and make it better. I guess it's hard to see from this view, but I get from the plan, it's like you're kind of tucked behind the couch, and then you're like up against the coffee table. It seems a little precarious with the current kind of ladder placement and circulation.
Well, and also, one of the things that everybody just threw the most simple ladders, but these are opportunities to really design a ship ladder with a little bit of slope that makes it much easier to go up and down. That could also be retractable and movable. So the gadget itself was never really explored as a separate design element, which could have and it should have. But again, it's sort of one of the things that I think we missed on doing a bit more.
What's the size of the unit, Sarah?
So it's from here to here, it's 22 feet, and then
Footage.
from here, sorry?
The square footage.
Oh, square footage around 1,100.
Yeah, I think for 1,100, like for that big of a unit, I think there's plenty of space for a regular staircase.
Yeah.
I think because if it was a mezzanine with where you have your 1 bed, that is fine, right? But when you have 3 bedrooms upstairs, I think it becomes a matter of
convenience.
Yeah, it affects everybody in the unit, right? And if your space was very tight, I'd be like, well, yeah, it's tight, but we have a ton of space.
Yeah, I almost felt like right here there could be a stair just tucked along that wall somehow, right? Like behind, and you can easily get up, and then perhaps there's a bridge that connects back across. But that's why I'm just saying the view makes it hard to kind of get into it, but it does feel like, and like there's no reason to really kind of like push the 7-foot envelope, right? I mean, you can go taller, like there's no Z constraint here. So I feel like that 7 foot is usually done when you're trying to really maximize and you have a confined space, you're trying to get more bedroom spaces in a tighter area. But I feel like the 45 feet, that's basically 6 times, 6 feet times 6 plus some change, I guess, if it's always 6 feet tall, since you have three layers, right? So it's like 12 times 3. But
Yeah.
I feel like that you could better, rearrange some of that space, especially at the scale that they are, to kind of work that in there. And perhaps it's also, it could easily, it could be, I mean, what else is happening in that double height space, right? It seems pretty narrow. And so I'm
Right.
curious, like, if it is that, there's no skylight in most of them that's bringing light in. So like, what is that big double height space actually getting?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, the light inside that double height would have to come from either this window or windows above here, right? Because on both sides of this, you have neighbors, correct? So
Yeah.
it's a really valid point. I think the question about ladder versus stair is a very very good one, especially on this unit that you actually have a 4-bedroom apartment at 1,100 square feet. It could have been explored, or it still could be explored by just thinking about how you could maximize this area underneath here.
Okay.
And I
Okay.
think it was highlighted in other examples. I think the shape of the unit is very interesting and allows for a little bit of like variation. But
Yeah.
we just mirrored these, right? And I think approach is something we should always consider. We mentioned it in the previous project. So some are facing the parking lot, some are facing the school, and some are narrow access, right? And some are, am I right? And some are.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that would have been a good opportunity to reconfigure this, and maybe depending on the direction they're pointing to.
Yeah,
Okay.
there should have been a second unit, right? And it's
Yeah.
just the units should have actually been one where you actually have your green space on this side. But then it would be great. Can you go back? It
Yeah,
would be
sorry
great
about
to
that.
think of having the white side when the unit is flipped, having the white side be the green space,
Grass. Okay.
right? So
Yeah.
something to also, you left that exploration. It would have created a much easier continuous access through the school side.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Everything would have been access through this one side.
Can you can you go to like a plan view with the school again? Yeah, right. Yeah, like one of these. And maybe I'm missing it, but like these stairs just as well, right? Like they just seem like they're just kind of maximum fire escape, like necessary stairs. I'm curious how they could be better, right? I mean, you have 2, but do they need to be kind of front and center? Could they be kind of better tucked in if it is about efficiency, and do something more in this area? I'm always like, this seems so tight to me, and I don't know if this is, because of the sight lines, but I just inevitably in every single project I want to continue like the lines into this kind of courtyard, and perhaps it's just side articulation, perhaps it's circulation, but it feels like there's some opportunities there where like this could be much more experiential than these kind of switchback staircases. Just kind of
It's almost like begin to play the formal game with your stairs, right? So you start really creating
Underutilized space here on the east to the next to the alley. I think that's an interesting angle. That could be interesting stair and access points too.
Yeah.
Like here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I see what you mean with that. Yeah.
Yeah, it's unfortunate that some of those opportunities of really extending the geometry that you've played with the units were not taken beyond the housing, right? So we're seeing it time and time again, and it's unfortunate, but something to consider and take a note for the next time.
For sure.
All right. Well, thank you, Sara. Let's
you.
see, Yasmin, can you go next? And Goyo, are you staying for one more? Goyo, thank you so much for sharing your time.
No, I enjoy it, and I appreciate everybody. Thank you for sharing your projects. And I just think for 3rd year, right? This is a good exercise it's a really good example graphically. Even I think they're very good. Personal notes. I wasn't with you in third year, Hector, but everybody feared Hector's studio because of how harsh he graded and how hard of a studio it was. And it's good to see you turn into a softie, Hector. And
With age, huh?
Yeah, I guess it's a good thing, right? But
I don't know, Goyo.
but no, I appreciate this. And again, housing, right? We always think about our comforts when we think about housing, but I think it's a good exercise in how you start meshing these together, and I think it's a good exercise. And thanks, Hector, for inviting me, and look forward to seeing you guys in future projects.
Thank you, Goyo.
Thank you, guys. Bye, Teddy.
Nice to meet you, Goyo.
Bye. See you.
Right. Just a side note, Goyo was actually my student. I don't know, 15 years ago, something, 20 years ago. I don't even remember. That's how long it's been. And it was, yeah, he actually worked with Teddy Cruz, the other Teddy. And he's actually worked on a housing project in San Isidro that was recently built. And he's now managing the social programming in that Casa Familiar project in San Isidro. So he's got a really interesting practice as well, and is doing this other, continues to work with Teddy Cruz. Anyways, let's get to Yasmin.
Okay.
Thank you for making this the case study as brief as possible so that we could jump. And then let's jump, for the sake of brevity. Let's jump directly to the formal scheme that you landed, so that we don't have to spend any time talking about the other two. Okay.
Okay. So for the case study, I picked Case Stock by the Hanoi model in Vietnam that was built in 2003. I was mainly drawn by its like overall shape, and also how it uses like natural ventilation, and its section, which was coming up right now, and how it kind of created multi-unit like units but with multiple floors, because I know they usually do like single floor units, but I wanted to explore a multi-floor unit. And I did that by like extruding all the main blocks, and I based my current model on the yellow one right here. So this is the one I chose. I actually took the model and I split it in half, and then I shifted it, and then I stacked it. And then from there, I kind of was just fitting it to the site itself and trying to actually come up with what I wanted within each of these units. So this is my axon. I twisted out the last two portions to create a more inviting space to walk in through the parking lot right here, and also through the school. So these are like the kind, I think this is just to give like an overall shape on how it is placed on the site itself. And this just goes through each of the floors. I have 2 units, both with 3 floors, one kind of like a student version of it, and then another with more of like, it could be more family oriented, or like more than 2 people or a couple, one with like more privacy than the other. And then this is kind of how you would like walk into the space itself. I wanted to have an actual like garden / courtyard space in between to give like this more indoor outdoor feel on the other side, because I know on the building itself there's balconies, and that gives it more of like an indoor outdoor feel. But then on the other side I felt like a lacked in, and the students would benefit more off of outdoor space and being able to connect with people that live there, and also just with the outside. Thank you.
Yasmin, I think you, unfortunately, you have not really completed everything that was required to show more about the project. Just from simply looking at the units, this is the first time I see how they work out, and as much as I've been really flexible with about the internal circulation within the units, you seem to have jumped into creating full stairs, but then your full stairs don't seem credible in the slope that you have them, and the openings that you have to connect from one to the other. So I just wonder if it's a 3-story unit that you have. If we look back at that unit,
Oh, that's one.
right? I just don't really think that it's working. That this, let me just change it. The slope is not really
Too steep.
It's way too steep, right? And it only has this tiny little openings to the floor, which leads me to believe that it's really not a 3-story unit. It's a weird hybrid. And because it's a weird hybrid, I don't really know if it works or not. On top of that, I think the openings that you have punctuated your diagram with are really not as clear as one would wish. You know, everything seems to be flat and surface. So those issues make your project really difficult to follow through. There is very little or no emphasis on how they work within the context, and the way that they fit on the site itself seems to be, I guess, not precise enough or not tight enough. There's a lot of leftover space that is really not occupied by anything, either a thought, an intention, or a program. So that's like, this is the first time I see your project in a long time, and I'm like surprised by its lack of resolution. I wish I had seen it more and I had given you more opportunity to get feedback.
No, that was on my part. Sorry, I was having trouble with this project.
Mm.
Yeah.
Okay. Teddy, you want to add anything to it? I think you're on mute.
Sorry, I was muted. Yeah, I agree. The windows just feel in this view super precarious as well. So that the kind of apertures, like the way they're kind of like, you know, lining up, you know, there. This seems to be catching the middle of a slab. This seems to be catching the middle of a slab. And when I try and like tie that back to the layouts in the plans below, it's hard to understand why they're there as well. And I think, you know, one of the beauties with the space block project is the kind of, you know, the use of the kind of opening to kind of frame the space, right? So like how those kind of Tetris block units, and then the kind of light channels kind of at the top for like those clear stories that bring it in. I think there's a lot of things to be learned in terms of how they're utilizing some aspects of the architecture in terms of like fenestration and circulation that you could apply to these units. And I think, you know, Hector's already pointed out some of the shortcomings, but you know, you're seeing like just, you know, some of the like the half patio here. It's like, well, where's that half patio articulated in this plan? It's like, is this, you know what I mean? Like, is this here? It's just, it's hard to kind of follow everything through.
Yeah. Again, you know, Sarah, I think you missed the mark this time, and in a large portion, unfortunately, I think it's because you chose to remain unplugged. So a lot to be learned from this experience, hopefully. Okay. Let's try more feedback next time to see if we could get you there. All right.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Jorge.
Hello. Yes. Good evening, everyone. My name is Jorge, and my case study that I choose was New Cover Apartment by Michael Matzlan. And it's located in Los Angeles and contains 97 units, affordable housing apartment building, and was built in 2009. Here's some quick images of the floor plan, the ground floor plan, and the third floor plan. circulation section and the building around. So all the units are the same. So pretty much is all the units are this sort of type of unit, which that I choose for my project. This is the base mass, and then I use flip it on 90 degrees, and then expand it, and then interlock, and then I started to distributing around the site. This will be my axonometric, and this is my floor plan. The circulation goes like from either from the sidewalk or the parking lot. Either way, you can get through the units and to the school. And this is a more so the first level is where the kitchen and the bathroom and the living. Then I have a mezzanine where it will be the bedroom, the closet, and the studio desk. This is a more clear project. Yeah. So yeah, so the way that you get onto the mezzanine, I have a ladder where will take you to the floor, and I have 16 units. I had to reduce it like 4 units because it wouldn't fit properly to the site plan. And each unit is about 300 square feet. And the highest point of the building is 15 feet high. And the lowest is 8 feet high, which will be the range of the door. And each unit has a courtyard where it has a foldable door where you can open like all the way to have more outdoor space instead of having like just enclosures and all the units are the same layout. You can enter from the courtyard or from the inside the site. And this is that's it.
Jorge, I think your project is although the units are complete and there is a very simple strategy. It's a single unit that just gets deployed in this asterisk. I think that the simplicity would demand for you to have more resolution on how it connects to the site, and unfortunately, it doesn't do that. There is very little, I guess, very little thought given to how the geometry of the units could begin to be manifested in the way that you deal with the outdoor space that belongs to the school. So this transitional space, outdoor space between school and the units are a huge opportunity that was missed. As well as I think the perimeter of the project is really, not really thought about, like having an understanding on how these things become connected, and then how the front engagement of that and that could have been better resolved. I mean, overall, I really enjoy the unit itself and the pairing of units. But unfortunately, there's so much more to the project that is left unresolved.
Yeah, I mean, 2 main points. You kind of left the triangulated meshes on your roofs for this view, which is kind of interesting actually, especially in your units. So like when you start to look, you start to see these lines drawn like in yellow, right? It almost feels like these are opportunities, right? And you could imagine the roof becoming, skylights, right? So you can have these opportunities that are starting to kind of triangulate your roof plane for you. And perhaps there's kind of skylights in these kind of top areas that start to kind of bring in more light, like in the kind of orientation would allow perhaps for diffuse light versus kind of shaded light, and then that have to deal with how that gets kind of punctured. If you're trying to with the workspace have more diffuse lighting and less harsh. But that is my main. It's just this view, like with those lines, feels like there's an opportunity that's been missed.
Yes.
And then the kind of little square, like this is an entrance, seems like unfortunate, right? Especially because it's a double entrance, right? So like this area is kind of where two people enter, right? You go in or you go in.
Yeah.
Yes.
So it feels like that it's a little bit of a wasn't fully resolved, right? It's just kind of it is what it is because of the geometry, and I feel like the geometry could have done more. In that case, like it perhaps could have lifted back up, right, and created more of a kind of pronounced like this is my entry, and kind of folded that plate up at that point versus just the kind of horizontal tiny little thing.
Like even creating like this large cone, it reminds me, Teddy, what you're saying. Rob Quigley's own house has a sequence where you enter this tiny little gate, but it's a vertical space that is about 30 feet high.
Yeah, that compression, right? It's kind of like a cathedral where you go in through the small and then it opens up and it reveals itself, right?
Exactly. So I think that's a very good idea that sometimes the entrance is such an important aspect of a tiny unit that it could, especially in this exercise, in this particular project, it could have been explored.
And then like my other comment is the kind of full height enclosures for these kind of courtyards, right? I mean, student housing is really about community, right? And so like the fact that this becomes almost like jail-like with like these vertical bars all over the place, and it looks like it's almost as tall as, the kind of sliding glass door. So I can only assume it's like 6'8" or 7 feet tall.
Yes.
Just kind of walking through here and just being surrounded by these bars. Those could easily be, perhaps in terms of security on the street, if you want to leave those at full height. But then once you get in the project and you start to see it happening, here and here, it's like at that moment, do we really need them? One, if we do, could they be much smaller, more informal enclosure like planters or things of that nature that kind of define a kind of private patio space versus this kind of walled off jail. I call them jail yards, like they're prevalent everywhere in like Southern California, but like when you go to these terrible mass developed subdivisions all over Southern California and you have a house that's 3,000 square feet and then you have a 200 square foot yard with like an 8-foot CMU wall, it just feels like a jailhouse, or like you're kind of in prison at that point. And that I feel these moments, these outward looking moments in terms of communal spaces, overall I think could just be considered better.
Sure. Thank you.
All right. Megan Colt, can you go next, please?
All right. Hey everyone, I'm Megan Culp, and here's my presentation for the RH103 or 301 Studio 5. I'm going to start off with the project 2. I did the Wazoko apartments for the global study. And so a little bit of general info on that. The architect was MVRDB. It was built in 1994 and to 1997. There was a total of 100 units, 87 of those being in that single block, and then 13 of those units are actually suspended off the side of it to the north face. This project is located in Amsterdam, Netherlands, and the client was the Het Oosten Housing Association. And then here are just some general pictures of it and some views of it. What really got me interested into this project was honestly the amount of kind of thinking of the zoning of where it had to be placed on the site, and then as well as the materiality with the wood siding and then the different colored glass for the balconies as well. And the unit that I chose was this little guy right here. I believe it was on the 7th or the 5th floor. And it was just a kind of a simple rectangular studio unit that I chose. And so here are my little iterations for that. First one here, I decided to bend it, branch it, so I would have this little piece kind of hanging off here. Originally, I was thinking maybe it would just create a nice little space in here, or maybe just use this as like a partition wall. And then I also stacked and shifted it, and then I actually ended up rotating it recently, so we really create this kind of more vertical aspect rather than horizontal.
Let's concentrate on the one you selected for brevity. Okay.
Gotcha. Here's the second one here that I did similar stuff, and then the one I picked here was I took the unit, I intersected it with itself, I stacked and shifted it, and then I rotated, making it more vertical, and I came up with this design here, making it very, very horizontal and vertical in that sense, kind of almost like Tetris blocks, I believe we were talking about. And then for the housing complex itself, here's my axonometric view with the units in sight. Here's the first floor of it. My total units is, I believe it was 25 units, 8 of which are on the first floor, and then the other 17 are on the second and partially third floor as well. Here's the second floor here. I have all my circulation kind of in the middle block here using singular staircases. So every unit has pretty much second or 2 points of entry and exiting. And then the third floor right here. Here's the first unit type. This is the type that's on the first story. You come in, you have pretty much your whole social space on the bottom here. You have your living, dining, kitchen, also sliding doors to go out into the outside area, and then a little ladder here just to go up to a little mezzanine for your sleeping area, pretty much separate from all the social aspects. And then the second one, which is going to be kind of the double story high one, you would have pretty similar concepts, social spaces on the bottom with the restroom to kind of behind the doorway. And then you'd also have another ladder going up to the space that can usually fit 2 beds, possibly 3 if you need to, as well as a study space. And then the third is pretty much the exact same thing as the other one, except it just has the mezzanine on top of the restroom rather than a whole story. And that's it.
I think your circulation seems to be excessive. You have way too many stairs. You could have consolidated them to 2. Of course, it's difficult to follow the logic behind because you don't have any dash projecting lines from the ground from each floor. But that's something that immediately jumps out. There's an excessive amount of stairs. In a project this size, it's kind of wasteful. You have 25 units, correct?
Yes.
And your units, one thing that I really like about the dimension of your units is that they're tiny. What is the square footage of each unit?
So for the first floor units, they're about 270, and then the second story with no kind of second balcony, the one with the mezzanine is about 240, and then the larger one is about 515.
So you have really tiny units,
Mhm.
and I think that they start to work well. But unfortunately, you're even the way that you depict your mezzanine just occupying top of the bathroom, they become extremely small, and there's no space anywhere in your project for storage. That's an opportunity for even tiny units like this. You are required to have a storage, and because of the way that the render is difficult to really understand how. Images, perspectives would have been really great to see what it feels like to be inside these units and how they relate to their tiny outdoor spaces. So overall, the density seems nice. The modulation seems really exciting, but there's a lot of resolution that is missing. And in one thing that I always say, like that is also a big mistake or in your project that is missing, is there is a lack of connection between the project and the school, and definitely your street front is very weak.
Gotcha.
Okay, I think if you go back to the main density plan, the second floor. So the one that shows all the units, sorry.
Oh, sorry. Yeah.
Yeah. So that, yeah, this one right here, I think this is, you know, whenever you start to see the kind of rubber stamped housing units, like of a housing project, if you start to call that into question, right? Like never once is like the kitchen or the bathroom like sharing a plumbing wall, and there's like small little kind of just maneuvers that you can do to kind of prove that efficiency. And that's one of the things that, you know, it's fine, you know, like in the kind of academic, you know, mindset of, you know, I'm really always about these kind of, you know, these exterior gardens and giving everybody a private space. And that's great. But then it's like when you come, it's, you know, it's part of the hiring process and you bring this plan in front of, you know, someone who's interviewing you, it shows that you just, you know, you don't kind of understand some of the main components of like housing density and layouts and kind of trying to organize that, let alone the stairs, right, are excessive, but just making sure you could just see at some of these moments where you just want to be mindful of it or have a really good response kind of queued up. But it's like, okay, why is the bathroom just not there, right? And so it's like, if you start to do that, you start to kind of shift that over, then the bathrooms are sharing a plumbing wall. It just becomes that much more believable of the density and a plan that's kind of had that considered. And then you could still operate and make sure the outdoor space, you know, it's just a new constraint, right, that you haven't quite considered yet. And once that constraint's there, you could still easily make these units work. But that, as long as that could be, you know, bathroom leading up to the kitchen, I mean, that could be as easy as just sliding the kitchen over and sliding the door over. And so I think there's a lot of potential to do that. But right there, when you see that, that's like that kind of hand screeching across the chalkboard. It's just, you want to make sure that you get that right before you put that in front of, you know, other people's eyes. And then if you go back to the overall view,
Yeah, sure.
the axon at the end, which you know, again, like there's lines here that are the kind of proponent of, or the kind of result of you modeling things and then just copying them, right? And so like when you see these kind of large horizontal lines, right, that are kind of just like, well, what happens then if that was actually considered and removed, and now the material or whatever modulation comes in, you start to read, I'm trying to get you a different color, this annotates not fun. But you start to read this, right, all as one surface now versus kind of stacked components. And that'll start, and that could be something that you choose back and forth. So sometimes you might want to show the kind of resolution of unit, and sometimes you might want to have material that starts to run vertically and start to break up that kind of horizontal stacking typology that you start to see. And that's something that can easily just be cleaned up here, like once you do that make 2D. And it's a good exercise to go back through and, you know, have some fun with that, because I do think there's some really nice moments where I can see, you know, things like this starting to kind of find their way and really start to read more, you know, holistically thought once you start to just make those edits.
Yeah, I think just the quality of the drawings leaves a lot of information out. I think most of your bathrooms need to be revisited because I don't think they're working. There's not enough clearance in front of your toilets in many cases. And this huge aspect of economy when lining up plumbing walls might have been something that you could explore a little better and still manage to result in a better way. Okay. Well, thank you so much. And let's see, Wendy, can you go next?
Yes. Let's see.
Thank you, Wendy.
I think this is the right profile. Okay, so the case study I picked was Zanclotna. I forgot how to pronounce that, but those apartments were built in Mexico by Rafael Pedro, and it's mostly located in tropical forest. It has 4 apartments, and each apartment has a different what's called an entrance, and it's labeled, or
Are you showing more than one image?
yeah, I'm just, so here it's A, starts from A, B, C, and D, and D is like underground.
and each one of them has an outdoor space and an entrance and a parking. These are like just different views of the interior. So the one I picked was Unit C, and also I showed floor plans. It has 2 levels. It goes from private to public as well. The iterations I did were basically just like shifting, expanding, and reflecting, and then I stacked all of them. So this is the first option I had. The second one, on that one I did the same thing, also like intersect and rotate, but I added carving to create some voids. Oh, sorry, it went super quick. Yeah, the third one, which the one I picked, was basically I took the unit, I rotated it, and then I did a reflection tool, then intersect, and I made some carving. And I tried to stay close to the case study variations that I liked, which is the openings, the outdoor space, and also the landscape. So this is the axon. This is I have 4 levels, and each level, the unit types ranges from 1-story to 2-story units. This is the first floor plan, second floor plan, third and fourth. I have a section. And then the first unit that I have that shows the 2-story unit, which is basically it has an outdoor space on the side. I did 2 different aspects of it, or perspective views. So you have an outdoor space, and then you enter, there's like a bathroom over here, and then if we want to rotate it or flip it, you will see the kitchen on the other side. And then we use the ladder to go upstairs, and I used the upper stairs by the void to put like a bed, a closet, and work area. The 1-story unit basically has a backyard, outdoor seating. It has a bathroom, kitchen, and a dining room, kind of dining table. Then also it has a bedroom, and this one is for 2 people, or it could be like a family unit. Also, each unit has a work area, closet, and bed, mostly an outdoor space. This is pretty much it. I'm missing 3 more drawings.
Wendy, next time, please do what I asked so that we could really see the plan with the axle.
Yeah, my Rhino was really going slow.
Okay. Yeah, so that's one thing that is missing, right? Also, the missing is really how the spirit of the place. There's some nice modulation that is happening in the project, but none of your drawings really tell us much about the qualities of the spaces. The axonometrics of the single units begin to do that, but they also fall short because they're really about
doesn't have a lot of information,
right? So
it's not clear. Yeah, I know. I tried to do rendering and perspectives. I don't know, ran out of time, I guess.
So I think just circling back to the relationship to the context, I think it's still missing a street front in a much more decisive way. If you look at your
yeah, because my
axonometric
overall axon is not quite completed yet.
So there's a lot of incomplete information, and a lot of the information that you show us in the project that makes this be closer to what Monica did, but I think even more so in your case, because there's really not enough information about the unit itself. And your internal circulation seems to be a little bit fudged, and the external circulation in the center, it's a very, very important aspect of your project, and is not really explained fully.
Yeah, because both of the buildings connect with like walkways and stairs, and I missed showing that. I know.
Like,
Yeah.
so there's a lot missing in your project, unfortunately. Anything you want to add to that?
I think just overall, like, looking at some of your case studies use of fenestration in the geometry, it seems to have fallen off on the final proposal. Like in plans, it's hard to see at the scale, but it does seem like there's more fenestration shown in plan than there is in the final axon views. And I would be curious to see, like right now it feels very kind of medieval, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like it's very thick and walled and very kind of small little like strategic slits at a higher level, like looking down at like, the attacking Romans or something. So I think, that kind of solid base should feel much lighter, right? Especially, in terms of the student housing and communal aspect. So versus a very robust, almost fort-like, like a fortress. So hopefully, it isn't like that. And it's just it's a resolution issue and a time issue, but from the plans, it feels like there's something that might be there, and hopefully it comes to fruition.
Yeah, the plans and site plan promises a lot more than what you're delivering. That's one way that I would put it.
Yeah,
all right.
I know. I felt that too when I was doing it. Like,
All right.
I know what I have, and I know
All
what I
right.
need to do.
Perfect. Thank you, Wendy.
Thank you.
Megan Lefowitz, can you go next?
Yes.
Thank you.
Can you see my screen?
Yes.
Okay, so for my case study, I chose The Housing for the Elderly by Iris Mateos. So for the building information quickly, it's located in Alcácer do Sal in Portugal. It was created in 2006 to 2007 and then constructed in 2008 to 2010. The footprint area of it is 1,560 square meters. And the number of units, it was a total of 38, 16 one-bedroom units and 22 two-bedroom units. So the property itself was for the elderly, so it's a mixture of housing and hospital use. And so I included photos like back here of the building in the daylight, the building at nighttime. And the main focus of this building was the voids that were created, like the checkerboard pattern. Here I've included the building's exterior, and I included a quote from Mateos himself: "The building acts like a path in the wall that naturally rises from the topography. It limits and defines the open space, organizing the entire plot." And here I just had more close-ups of the cutouts in the building and the interior of it. And here is my 3D modeled unit. Since it was only the two different unit types, I went with the two-bedroom one since it was larger than the one-bedroom one. And so going from my unit, this was my first scheme. Since the unit itself is very small, I had to find ways of making it more habitable for people. So I extruded and stretched this one, and then I reflected and rotated and merged them. And then I expanded the edges to give it that extra flair. In my second one, I again stretched and extruded the shape, but this time I decided to branch it, and I branched it in different dimensions. So one side is more habitable than the other one. One side is only, I think, 3 feet wide, but it creates a space for a balcony for the unit. And then this is my third and my chosen scheme. So what I did is I again extruded and stretched the shape, and I mirrored it, rotated it, and joined it together to create this L-shaped unit. And with that L-shaped unit, I created this, this shape over here, which is a total of 20 units. And here is my axon of my chosen unit. The maximum height of it is 33 feet. And the total square feet is 7,480. So each unit is roughly 374 square feet. It's very hard to see in my axonometric, but the shape of the building, it sort of tapers in the middle. So there's 8 units on the bottom, 4 in the middle, and then 8 units again on top. And so here I just have a basic overview site plan of the top area of it. I was having a bit of an issue with my Illustrator, so my line weights are not there, but I will fix that. Here is my first floor plan, and like I said, with the line weights, the wooden flooring shows up a little darker. And so the units themselves are reflected on each other, and the circulation between them is right through the middle. There are 2 staircases on each side, and on each, on the first floor and second floor. And then on the first floor, I added this communal space over here, just because the units themselves were so close together. So I used the same unit shape, and I created over here is a laundry area, and then over here would be like a study area or just a relaxing area. And even over here, I added extra public communal space by including a fountain and a couple benches, just to make that space more usable instead of it being just empty. So here's my second floor. It is just the 4 units, and because of that, there is voids on each side. And so what I decided to do with the voids, the staircases go up to here, and I created that as a semi-private space for the residents themselves. So I did add a couple benches on there. There were a couple plants, but I don't know why they're not showing up. Then my third floor is similar to the first floor. The units themselves, they are all identical layouts, except the only difference is these units that face the street. I inverted the L shape so that there was more, it wasn't completely flat against the street, so that there was more shape to it, but it is still the same layout as the other ones. And here I've included my floor plan. So each unit has basically a whole wall of windows, because the unit themselves, to me, feel very small. So I wanted to open it up more, get more light in. And yeah, it was very hard to navigate the narrow spacing, but I think I found a way to do it well enough. And yeah, just back to my axonometric.
Daddy, you want to start this one?
I think the thing that's hardest for me to visualize is what that middle situation is. So
I included, I took a screenshot very quickly because I wasn't able to do this sequential perspective. So I just took a quick screen grab of my rendering just to give you the impression of what it would look like.
yeah, I don't know if this one helps. So it looks like there's only a unit in the middle. Is that correct?
2 units.
2 units.
Two units
On
that are
each
straddling.
side.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so what becomes that space, I guess, between, right? That's, to me, like, seems like a very, there's a lot of potential.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Do you have an answer?
What? Yeah, like this is a huge, actually, this is the first time I really understand what happens there.
Yeah, the units
all of this.
Oh yeah, that I was trying to create the semi-private spacing, but the thing is, I wasn't quite sure on what to exactly put there, so I still need to work a bit more on that. But these two bits over here are still part of the middle unit, so it's in the L shape out here.
So this is like that middle floor is extremely important to delineate in a way that is credible and understandable, because it seems like you invest quite a bit of real estate on that. Once you have those voids should become units for most developers. But in your case, you choose to leave it as a void, and that void it's like screaming for attention, right? So I would say that that your project, I like the unit itself. I like the simplicity of the scheme that is just the same unit deployed throughout. But the connection of the massing of the project to the site seems to be missing, I guess, resolution.
I just wanted to quickly go back to the axon. I just wanted to show, I included in between the two units, the communal units, I included a passageway to get towards the school, which I didn't show before. So I just wanted to quickly mention.
Yeah, and if you look at that floor plan of that ground floor, there's like a near miss alignment, right? Like it always kind of grabs my attention when I see that. Why can't those two be lined up together? And this one lined up to that.
Yeah, I was at the limit of the space, so I couldn't move it up.
It's sort of like this needed to be maybe brought closer so that you actually create a pinching point, right? Since you already changed the program of both of these guys, you could modify them further to create the enclosure that you want. At that point, you would make the space in between a larger space. Maybe the space here would have been nicer to be larger, right? And again, just creating this sequencing that's beginning to speak with the same intention that your units are connected back to back. I think would be should have been dealt with in this area.
Okay.
Okay. And then go ahead.
Yeah, I think, well, this great view, because this is my next major point I had, was like, this is a massive space, right? Like those are two stairs and this is wide, and it's just this like large cavernous space. I would have an idea of how I can draw, like you're drawing, like you're paying special attention to like the wood floors and like the bathroom floors and the tile, and it's like, well, what about all this, and how can this perhaps get treated that same way? So like, can some of these geometries come back out, and like, can there start to be other things that you start to kind of pull in, and perhaps there becomes kind of a front porch versus a backyard kind of relationship with these units. I call that, I always think that's a nice move. Like, I hate the doors on a flat wall for multi-family housing.
Yes.
So like when you see the kind of two doors here and the two doors here, I always want to question, how do I create a space that seems like it belongs to them, and that basically that is not just a door on a wall, but it has that, I keep saying like a front porch, like suburban mentality, but something to that level of that notion in there starts to help break up that space as well. And it gives people reason to kind of stop and like have a conversation versus just going out the door and kind of leave straight to the nearest staircase or exit.
Okay.
Yeah, that I think in most of the projects that have this internal circulation have missed that opportunity, and it's something that is extremely important in housing projects. There's a social aspect of housing that it starts by the way that one accesses your own unit, right? That's why those condominium projects with parking below grade are the worst projects that there are. Those are the enemy, right? You might have like a multi-million-dollar unit, but the fact that you have to park your car underground and go through the scary elevator or stair to go up to your unit already kills anything that you could do with the units themselves. So be mindful that this aspects, and this is for everyone, the aspect of access needs to be one of the things that you spend equal amount of time with when you're dealing with multiple units.
Okay.
Okay. All right. A lot of work to do to get it to where it needs to be, but I'm glad that you at least got it this far. Andrea de Leon, can you go next, please? Teddy, we have two more, and I don't know if David is going to have enough to show us. I haven't seen much, but let's see. Andrea, do you have?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay.
Andrea and David, are you the only two left, according to my list? Is that correct? Anyone else? Yeah, I think that's it.
Can you see?
Yes.
So the project I decided to focus on was 1,000 square meters prefabricated housing by the firm Summary. It is located in Valle Cambra, Portugal, and it was built in 2000. Here's an accent of the project. There isn't a specific unit I focused on since they're all the same. So I just picked one from the ones on top. I did, I'm sorry, it's because I have notes here. I did 3 iterations for the first one. I used fracture, then fracture and shift, and lastly overlap. The first 2 didn't work out because of how narrow the ends are, so I decided to go with the third, and I played around with it more and came up with 2 more. And ultimately, I decided to go with the one on the bottom since it's the one I found the most versatile. I used merge and overlap in order to create the whole building. And this is the accent of the whole site, and I'm sorry for the poor quality of the image. Overall, the whole building is about 40 feet tall and it has 4 stories. Each one is 10 feet tall. I tried to mostly make private areas. The way the cubes stack is that each one creates a balcony or a small private space for the other one that's below. And from the shape, I came up with 2 different types of units. And this is the first one. And it's present in the 1st and 3rd floor of the building. It has 2 bedrooms, a kitchen, a living room, and a balcony, as well as a small reading area. The second unit is pretty much the same, but the direction is shifted. It still has a balcony and all the same elements as the first one. And here are the floor plans, starting with the 1st floor. Can you see my mouse? Yeah? Okay.
Yes.
These parts here are the individual areas, and the part in the middle is shared. And so instead of entering from the front, like with these, you enter from the side in these ones. The 2nd floor has a balcony for each unit. And yeah, it has a balcony for each unit, and they're all pretty much the same. It's just that they kind of like mirror. And the 3rd and 4th floor plans are basically just repetitions of the first 2. Here's my first section. Here's the second one. And I also decided to add a perspective shot of the outside. And that's it.
Okay, I think very similar to the previous, you know, in terms of like the exterior, right? Like the units and the layout seem like there's a lot of, you know, nice moments, especially like the kind of the void that serves as kind of the entrance to two units. So I think that was like, you know, one of these moments here, perhaps like you kind of walk in, and then from there I can either go to that unit or go to that unit, right?
Yeah.
So I think that's a really nice moment that kind of differentiates between just kind of like, you know, the doors on a wall like I'm drawing over here. You know what I mean? So I think that's kind of smart, but then it leaves me wondering now, what do we do with the rest of this space, right? And I mean, these kind of large, seemingly opaque, you know, like bands here for circulation. I'm curious, you know, what starts to happen in these kind of these spaces, right? Like if it's all about those entrances, then like what happens here? Because that's kind of a semi shared space, and then this is the public space, and then it's all about just getting to here and getting down, or is there something else that can happen between those units? Can this get pushed out a little bit, perhaps, right? It's be kind of more of a shared space as well, and something that, you know, students can utilize in terms of like an outdoor lounge. I think overall, you know, we're getting to the end here, but it seems like the units became obsessive because the units are, you know, there's some really nice variety and ideas within the units themselves, but then the aggregation and then, you know, basically what the kind of building looks like from the exterior, it seems a little shortchanged in a lot of these projects, and I think this one, you know, can definitely benefit from, you know, another round of investigation in terms of enclosure and what it means, because like right now, you know, it doesn't really speak, you know, to the level of an architectural project at this point. It looks like a series of masses, right? And so in terms of like fenestration and materiality and like transparency and translucency, I think that's something that should definitely be explored. And then, you know, the same thing that I've been saying kind of over and over is, you know, okay, like we get here, it's like, is it just about going from here and going into the school, or what else can start to happen within this space here as well? Hector, you're muted.
All right, sorry. I think, you know, the mundane quality of your circulation, it really kills the vibrancy of your units. I have to say, Andrea, I'm happily surprised by the quality of your units. I was extremely nervous because I hadn't seen it, but you have actually pulled this really nice sequencing of very simple units, but yet they tell a lot of good intentions. Your project, of course, falls short in the way that it doesn't really deal with the street in a much more cohesive way. This end units needed to be modified a bit to pay homage to that, but perhaps it's the lack of resolution in this perspective that tells us an incomplete story. Can you go back to the floor plan of the large floor plans of the ground unit, the first and the second floor plan? Because I think there are some really nice things that happen there that based on everything we've been talking about in terms of the access, it would have been really nice, really nice to think of this sequence of entry to be more as a pushed in. If you had pulled that door in, okay, so that you could actually envision your door happening here or happening once you go inside each niche, each of your units would have this little recessed entrance, just a little recessed entrance that would make it more, I guess, more socially acceptable or socially less awkward. In fact, the units that face this common shared space could have been even longer, right? And the whatchamacallit, the opening into that should have been explored even further, right? the economy of everything else seems right. I think this portion should have been a little bit more open, because you have really nice long patios. It almost makes that should have been a complete transparency, right? Just like you did here. Those transparencies should have really been the entire width of that space. And this is something that I mentioned to most people. That way you really, when you're talking about an indoor-outdoor situation, you really emphasize this as an expansive view between here all the way out to there. And in the case of the end units, it goes beyond it, right? In the case of the internal units, you actually have here to there and here to there. Overall, I think more time, more resolution to the overall relationships to street, to school, and to circulation are the things that make your project fall short. Everything else, I think it's convincing enough to make it a solid project. So thank you. And I think we're going to close. David, do you have enough to show us at least as much as
yeah, I can show.
Okay.
Do you still want me to do the case study like a little bit, or just go straight into my project?
Let's go really quickly. Just tell us what the case study was, and then go directly to your project, please, because we already run, way out of time.
Can you see the screen there?
Yes.
Okay, so the project that I started off with was the Monterey housing by Elemental, and it's in Santa Catarina, Nuevo León. It was constructed in 2010. Here's some images really quickly. Here's some detailed right there. Some more images and drawings. And there's two units. There's a initial unit, and then there's a duplex unit. And this is the one I picked. I picked the duplex. And then let me go on to the final project. So basically, start off with the three. And here they are. Then I did the 3 site deployments, and this is the final one that I ended up picking, which was the original unit. I expanded the little blocks. I shifted them around and rotated them, and then just rearranged them into the new unit. And it kind of came out in this like stair, sort of like ascending order. So I just called it Stairway to Heaven. There's like kind of like the early iterations of the site map. I messed up on the complex plans. Now looking at everyone's project, I realized it didn't come out quite right, but that's kind of like the circulation right there. This is the actual floor plan that I started off with, and the units are 2 units per structure, so they connect at the first unit connects to the second unit from this wall. That's why there's no windows on this side. And then on this one here, it utilizes I shouldn't spend a lot of time on the floor plans actually, but this is the other side of the unit, and since it's floating, you have to go up the stairs. This bottom part is kind of floating. You kind of have to go up the stairs. And then this is for the layout on the site, I just flipped the same structure upside down to get the porous effect through it. So since it's the same space, it's basically the same floor plans with just minor variations, and kind of like mixing the programs for both units into this one to try to make it work. And then here's this one. So they connect on this side. The reason there's windows right here is because there's like an open space right here, which is like a little yard, is part of the porosity right there. So that's why it has windows right there. And then here's a perspective that I got of it's cut out because it's from like inside. You could kind of see like how you go up into the second unit. You could kind of tell like the outside space is right there. Another perspective and another perspective. Here's the axonometric floor plans right there. There's for the first unit, for the first layout of the unit.
Can you stop there?
Yeah.
Just like to be clear, one of the things that is extremely bothersome is that you have a lid in here, right? This is a unit that has got,
Yeah.
and then you show stairs that go from inside this unit from here,
hmm
and they penetrate that roof to go inside
I
this
I had I
this
had
level.
made like a they were originally like a little further up, and I had made like a little opening to kind of like to have the space for people to clear it. But as I went on, it wasn't working, and I didn't have time to fix it. But yeah, no,
So this is
yeah.
this is not just a didn't have time to fix it. This is absolutely an unworkable floor plan. You have missed the mark here because you do not understand that when you have a stair connecting 2 stories, the circulation has to go from inside one space to inside another space.
hmm
And if it's exposed at one point, how do you have to land? You have to go first outside. How do you protect? How do you seal the bottom space so that there's no rain coming in through the holes there, right?
Mhm.
And how do you create a landing here so that this whole intubated stairway is connected? And it's
Right.
to me it seems like a really lazy way of putting a circulation between 2 floors, because you couldn't think of any other way of doing it. You just basically threw this thing in the middle. So
Well, it was actually it's in the middle because it also creates separation from the on the 2 areas. It was just too much of an open space. It kind of creates separation from the dining and living areas a bit, and
but but look,
it's also divider.
but look, it doesn't work.
I know it doesn't work. Yeah.
It doesn't work.
Yeah.
And this is something became clearly apparent, that your floor plans are diagrams. There's lack of connection to anything that happens outside. There's the indoor-outdoor exploration that was required in this project seems to almost culminate with what you imagine be this middle level, right? I mean, that's where this is where that happens, correct? But you have
Mm.
at the end you have really you cannot say that that's a first floor plan, second floor plan, and third floor plan of this complex here on this sequencing here. It just shows that you have no idea how to illustrate or how to graphically put together a convincing set of drawings. I have no idea how they stack one to another of that unit. And even if you have this diagram here next to it, it's still not working because of the way that you have deployed it. So, David, it's like I try to give you the benefit of the doubt, but I'm really disillusioned that there is this project has remained as a diagram for so long and has never really explored any resolution until yesterday. And we land to this final day and having a project that doesn't seem to work and doesn't have all the components that one would require to have a comprehensive housing project. I don't know if Teddy would like to add anything to this.
No, I think you covered it.
So I think you and I need to spend some time talking about how to move forward, David. And I'm hoping that you take this as a lesson moving forward on how sooner you need to start making decisions, and hopefully you could spend some time really studying how to put a set of convincing floor plans together. Okay.
Right.
All right. Thank you.
Wait, do you want to see that? I think I have. Yeah, I have
Okay.
another.
Sure.
Then this one is the upside down version of that, and it has the stairway leading into the first floor right there, which is right here.
So let me just ask you, you have this, you want to show me this. This has 3 floors. How do you connect from first floor, second floor, and third floor? How do you connect?
Oh, there's little ladders. It's a ladder. It goes from
But these are full
here to
height.
here.
But these are full height rooms, right?
Yeah.
So you cannot, and this is something that I've repeated N times, and I don't know where you were when I talked about this. Ladders are only ways of accessing when you have a less than full full 7 foot and above ceiling height. When you have a full ceiling height, you need to have a conventional stair. Okay. So, yeah, this lack of understanding how one goes from floor to a full 3-story unit seems to have missed entirely the mark. And I'm really sorry about that. Let's just let's just check this for experience, and let's reconvene later on in the week. Okay, David?
Do you still want to see the rest of the project, or should I just?
If everything is at this level of resolution, it doesn't make sense. I think it's, I mean, you could go ahead and flash through it.
Okay. And that, yeah, that's the final with the, I think that's what you wanted with the axon, like the openings to the outside and the circulation, right? Is that closer to it?
There's nothing I could see here. If you could zoom in, maybe I could see a little bit more. But you have all just like I've been saying all along, this 3-dimensional axonometric does not show what happens in the surface, because you have a lot of dashed lines happening inside the unit that mean absolutely nothing. They just confuse the content of that drawing. Do you understand that? And I've been saying this all along. Like, okay, you already did the diagram. Let's start resolving the units, and let's start giving solidity, creating walls, creating doors, creating windows. And you haven't done that. You still remain, you're working right on top of that same diagram, and it's not helping you. It doesn't clarify the project. So zoom in as much as you can on those units, and you on that axonometric, and you'll see.
I don't know. Let me zoom in on this. Full screen.
Yeah, there's not enough there to see anything, Dave.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Okay. Well, before we do anything you want to share, Teddy, as closing statement for the class?
It's great to see other student work being produced at San Diego. This is kind of my first semester teaching there. I'm actually up at Burbank, and it's always great to see kind of what the other campus is up to, and to see kind of a nice little presentation from Hector Studio from each of you. I think it's exciting. Seems like there's a lot of energy, even given the kind of virtual platform and the kind of difficulties that come along with that. Some of you produced some really intriguing proposals, and I haven't even been to campus, and so for me it was also kind of a learning experience to kind of see how the school works, and what I jumped into Google and was kind of checking out the street view, and so I feel like I already have that much more of a kind of comprehension of the school and the kind of the physical environment that surrounds it, and the opportunities that there are. It seems like there's a lot in that neighborhood, and for it to grow and continue, and hopefully become more vibrant. So I think that I appreciated it. I think there's some there's definitely some gaps. I think one of the kind of commonalities was the kind of lack of communal space. It seemed like when there was communal space, it was always in that lower left corner, kind of between the housing bar and the kind of Woodbury's building, on the street. I feel like there, it seems like it might have been, worded as a constraint by Hector, but it seems like the courtyard and the circulation between the two buildings, there's a lot to happen there, negotiating what I understand is the wood shop and the opening and like the kind of noise. And, it just feels like, a lot of the kind of formal geometric studies that you guys went through could have found their way from being kind of stacked to kind of being arrayed on the kind of ground level. And working with that geometry that you developed, to me, is always kind of the starting point for how to address the site. So especially in these kind of formally driven studios, you arrive somewhere, it's intriguing, you start to kind of rationalize it and work with it and try and get the plans to work. And then you have this kind of, it lands into what is a rectilinear site. So it's like you have something that's going off in acute angles, or something that's going off, and creating a complex grid. Just taking that and extending that and flattening that to the ground plane and having the building continue on the site is always a great starting point for kind of site design, entrance coordination, breakout spaces, and kind of really making it feel kind of at the human scale. And this is something that, you know, at a housing project that has maybe somewhere, it looks like there's a range of like 12 to 35 units, that human scale is absolutely important in these presentations, right? It's not like a 100 unit or a 200 unit or, you know, a 500,000 square foot project. Like, you kind of, the scale that this is really lends itself to take advantage of that. And so I would hope for all of you, you know, going forward in your portfolio, it's always terrible when you see a floor plan and you see no context addressed around it. And so just remember that, like, that, you know, whether it is to the site constraints or the sight lines as well, is like, that is for you to kind of design as well, and not just read it as a tabula rasa. It's a blank slate, and I'm treating it as a blank slate. So it gives a softness to the project as well. You know, you start to kind of incorporate landscaping or softscape or some hardscape. And so I think, you know, I keyed in on that a lot of you, and I think that's just, for some of you who have, you know, the stronger projects, that little thing's just going to make it that much better. And those of you, you know, who have a lot to go, I would take some of that forward as well and use it the same way that I talked about on the site, but use it for your facade. I think overall, a lot of the enclosures were very, you know, left to just being the result of a formal study, right? So it's like, I have these kind of aggregated shapes, and I need a window here because it's the bedroom, right? But like, how does some of that geometry start to inform what can happen across the facade? I think I made some comments about like skylights. A lot of roofs were kind of left unaddressed, and you guys had these really topographical projects, so you could use skylights there. That same comment could apply to the vertical surfaces as well. And so, you know, just kind of setting up a grid, or, you know, working with the geometry and kind of offsetting the geometry that's there. Always a good first starting point, just to kind of start to get some kind of level of detail articulation in terms of, you know, sensibility. But yeah, I think, you know, that's a lot of comments, but, you know, I'm the only one here, so I think perhaps I'm just trying to cover everything versus kind of handing the baton off to another juror. But I enjoyed it. You know, I wish I would have seen more of your faces, to be honest. The kind of cameras off is always, you know, it's a delicate subject here, but, you know, I wanted to see more students and see who perhaps, you know, I could potentially have in the future or work with. And so those of you who did turn your cameras on, it's a pleasure to meet you. Those of you who did not, at least I know your voices, and, you know, maybe I'll see you guys around.
All right. Well, Teddy, again, thank you so much for staying this long with us. Your comments are very valuable and really precise. I'm going to ask everybody to turn on their cameras to say goodbye to Teddy. And let me again thank you and invite you to come as soon as we have this thing blow over, this pandemic. It would be great to see you here and give you a tour of the school. All right. Thank you again, and I look forward to seeing your projects this week.
All right. Great to meet you guys. Great to see all your faces.
All right. Thank you.
Your feedback. Bye.
Great work.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. I think we're going to, Kevin.